Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Solution Podcast. It's the solution. Yes, yes. It's the solution, ladies and gentlemen. We are here for the truth. That's what we are here for. It's the Solution Podcast. Let's get to the solution. Let's work out these problems. Let's get to it. Let's tell them the truth. Let's stop the lies. Let's give them the evidence. The Solution Podcast. We got you, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you stay tuned. I hope, comment. Hold on. Let me say that again. I hope you comment, like, and subscribe. We've got you. We're gonna tell you the truth. We're not gonna lie. And don't forget, ladies and gents, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem.
That's how it's sweet. Look at her. This is her.
We are live. Shouts to everyone. This is Solution Podcast, and today we're going to be talking about was Muhammad's marriage to Aisha moral, but we're going to be focusing more on the is sleeping with a 9-year-old considered to be, pedo Ilya. The YouTube is very sensitive these days. So much we can or can't say.
PDF, no, they use usually.
Sorry?
They usually use PDF.
Yeah, PDF. Thank you, bro. Appreciate that. Shouts to Peter in the comment section. This will be a good debate. Thank you. We have JM and we have our brother Daud here. Daud is a Muslim. JM is a truth seeker. And they are going to be engaging in this debate. So what's going to happen is they're going to have the intro. So they're going to opening statements, and then after that, it's going to be 3 minutes each time debate. So can't wait to. Is everyone all right? Daud.
Yeah.
Right,
So
bro.
obviously we agreed to this this debate, and it stemmed for those who are watching. This is it came from a group chat that we are all part of, and within the group chat, I made about 6 points that were very, very important for me to make this happening. Because, again, for the viewers to know, I'm actually vehemently opposed to talk about this subject in particular. I don't like talking about this subject, not because I'm afraid to talk about it, but because usually when this subject is discussed, I feel like it doesn't lead to more enlightenment towards the end of the discussion. And in order to prevent this from being a scoring point festival, I just wanted to read very briefly what I think as a mediator that you can remind us that will restrict us and make us really focus on the points and make the dialogue or the debate flow, and so that people, I believe, can benefit from it. I put this in the group.
Would you like me to read it for you? Yeah.
Yes.
So these are the conditions. This is what I would wrote. I'm good with timing, but each individual has to have at least 3 minutes to make their case without interruption or derailment. Second, rebuttals have to be addressed and responded to before we can move on to the next point. Addressed is defined by perhaps repeating the question and immediately followed with a response. 3, no insult, vile language, or provocation. Provocation are defined by saying things like, all Catholics are pedos, or your prophet was a PDF. Personal attacks and insults, I don't think we should have an issue with this, but it has to be mentioned. If that happens, the debate will be terminated on my side. Okay, we've got number 4. Tangent can be made as long as one brings it back to the point being discussed within the 3 minutes. If tangent takes up all the time, the tangent will be ignored and the debate will progress until there has been a response to the rebuttal. Response has been the defining point. 6. Definition for concepts and words have to be given when asked for. This helps the addressee to fully understand the claims being made. 6. Claims have to be qualified and light evidence has to be presented. If not, then the debatee has to make clear that they may not have the evidence at hand, and point will then be regulated to another time. I won't debate claims that are not even proven to be true or authentic. 7. Mediators have the right to stop debatees and remind them to answer questions and ask for clarifications. 2. They have also authority to stop speakers from over speaking. 3 minutes speaking rule. Because I was already opposed to this debate, I will only tolerate 2 strikes before I'll remove myself from this debate. And just to keep it all the way fair, Daud did say you guys can add what you think is missing, and we can attempt to amend some of the points now. So we did agree to the conditions set by Daud. So, and he did give us a choice as well, right? So yes. So shall we start with the presentations? Yeah. I'm going to give you guys plenty of time to do your presentations, and after that, it will be 3 minutes. So who wants to start first, Daud or JM?
Daud, you can go first if you like.
Okay. All right. I don't have slides to show, unfortunately.
Daud, when you finish, just tell me you're finished, right?
Okay.
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 All right.
Yeah. And also, just a disclaimer, by no shape or form am I trying to justify pedophilia. I'm not here to defend pedophilia. I'm opposed against PDF, and I don't believe in the act of PDF to be moral. Just to make that clear as well. Okay, so I got a bit of a structure here. I do not have anything to share because it was just a lot. So, and these are notes I've taken and read about over the years. So one thing that I think is very important, and I did mention this earlier on, is that when we want to discuss something like PDF and we want to talk about morality, it is very of utmost importance to define those terms, because these terms are either used in a social and social setting without actually defining the word. And people discuss this in pubs and in schools and amongst friends and families. And those conversations usually form popular opinion on how the word is understood in a wider sense. However, when it comes to a debate, I think we should adhere to define words according to substance. Meaning there has to be some form, one way or the other, of a substantial amount of research that defines these words, because defining words are notoriously very difficult, and there's also wiggle room, and interpretation plays a huge role when that happens. So I feel like in this presentation, I will be talking about the definitions of what is what, and I will consider morality as well. For the viewers, we were trying to come up with other titles, but YouTube wasn't allowing us. So the conversation may vary from what the titles is about. But one thing, and this would have been the first question I would have asked GM as well, which is the difference between presentism and moral relativism. The difference between that, and I will be talking about that in a minute. Presentism basically is the idea that it's a historical analytical tool to look back into history, in order to judge cultural norms or values. And those tools are used in order to prevent the analysis to fall under biases. Meaning, it is highly, highly, highly recommended that if we are looking back into, say, the 50s, and there is a particular practice that is taking place in the 50s, and we want to understand why they're doing it, and we want to have a measured judgment on it without infiltrating and bleeding our contemporaneous sensitivities, then we have to be able to understand the social milieu, meaning we have to understand how is that given thing understood in society, why is it happening in the way it's happening in society, and what are the opposing views, if there are any opposing views to that, you know. And presentism, unfortunately, prevents you from doing that, because you're constantly looking back into the past with a hammer that says 2025, and you're hammering people with it. There's, of course, people who say, well, could you then argue about anything in the past, any bad things that people have done in the past? Of course not. It's a case by case. And I think the word analysis, presentism being a critique and an encouragement to use an analytical tool, should lead us to understand that it's case by case, meaning you have to analyze every case. Slavery, for example, people could say, well, you could say the same thing about slavery. Well, it depends. It depends what era you're looking at. It depends at what that era, how was slavery defined in that era? What, there's chattel slavery, and then there's other forms, domestic slavery and servitude. There's different types, and there's indentured servitude. They all come under the umbrella of bondship, but aren't necessarily all understood as the slave chattel slavery that was happening during the transatlantic slave trade. So this is why it's important that when we do look at things in the past, that we fully understand how they are defined and why they're happening. Okay, so so when it comes to presentism versus social relativism, so what are the differences? Because moral relativism and presentism are distinct but sometimes interconnected concepts. Moral relativism, a meta-ethical view, posits that moral judgments are true or false only relative to a specific standpoint, like a culture or time period, and no standpoint is inherently superior. So here it's saying that, well, we can't actually judge people in the past, and we can't say our point of view is superior because their point of view may have been superior. But that's not what presentism is about. Presentism is about something else. Presentism is about a historical analysis, again, that refers to the tendency of an interpretation the past through the lens of the present day, values and perspective, often leading to a judgment of past action or beliefs based on contemporary moral standards. And this is one of the arguments I will be sitting on, that it's extremely difficult to make sweeping statements when you are interpreting, because it is a form of interpretation. If we go back 1,400 years and we look at marriage as an institution, which was understood as an institution, and we then use our sort of post-industrial understanding of what marriage is, meaning which is a subgenre, which the subgenre of this post-industrial age would be post-industrial understanding of childhood, a post-industrial understanding of workforce and work protection. All of these things are extremely important when we look at the Victorian era, for example, and look at child labor. Why is this happening? And why and how is it moral or isn't moral? How were children understood? Is there a development on how children were viewed and how children are viewed today? And then perhaps investigating those reasons. So there is a sense of ethnocentrism where one culture might scream it's immoral because the minds, because our minds are over sexualized, and this is precisely the crux of this matter, that whenever this discussion is brought up, it's reduced to the consummation of the marriage. It's reduced to the sexual relationship between an old man and a young lady. And in particular, when we refer to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's usually reduced to the sexual relationship between the two. And that has to do with our contemporary way of looking at marriage. So while married youth of other cultures are just fated to each other by their families. So again, marriages being coming together didn't mean, it wasn't reduced to sexual activity, but it meant so much more. A marriage was a union between two families. It was marriage was used for peacekeeping between tribes and states and nations and kingdoms and neighborhoods, right? So it don't really interact till later. So there wasn't like a liberal sexual a mind frame for these people back then, where loads of young people were just like pre-birth, teenage pregnancies and things like that didn't exist, and it was about responsibility. The youth of the accuser of the culture, meaning usually people who are so hung up on reducing it into like a sexual relation, are usually people who do live in a society where it's rampant, and child pregnancy in this country has gone down over the years, but it was rampant at a particular time. So the concept of consent, again, this is going back to presentism. The concept of consent is a modern concept of the 20th and 21st century, and would probably have not been fully understood even in the 19th century, because later we will see that the concept of a PDF, or the study of PDF, it's a genre that comes into existence in the 19th century. It's formalized in the 19th century, and it has, most importantly, informed us, people today, how we view PDF. So yeah, I think I will stop there, and then I'll be talking about PDF in more detail, its definitions, and how it's understood medically and socially.
Thank you for that, Daud. That was just about 10 minutes, just over 10 minutes. And now it's time for JM to go with your presentation. Okay, JM, whenever you're ready.
I think you have to share it for me now.
Yep, hold on a second. I'll share your screen.
Great, thank you.
Okay, your screen is now, yep. All right, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
So all I'm going to do now is actually focus on the issue at hand. I think it's important for us to stay very dialed in on the issue and also the people involved in the issue, because I noticed in the brother's presentation, I'm not sure he even mentioned Mohammed or Aisha once. However, I'll be mentioning both those people, those characters, throughout the whole of my presentation, because that's what we're here to talk about.
Well, that was okay, fair enough.
So first of all, what I want to do is just make it clear that this presentation explores the ethical challenges surrounding the marriage between the Prophet Muhammad and Aisha, particularly her reported young age. The aim is not to offend or attack Islam, but to ask, should religious reverence override ethical concerns, especially when children are involved? So I want to provide some evidence, some background just regarding this marriage. So we have a man, a 54-year-old Prophet Muhammad, who married a young girl named Aisha when she was 6 years of age. The marriage was then consummated when she was 9 years of age. And obviously, this is coming from the hadith right here. So this is the background to this whole issue. It's important to add that there's no mention of menstruation or puberty, which means that she was prepubescent. So we have a 54-year-old man marrying a prepubescent child. The marriage is often defended on cultural grounds. Such practices were common in the 7th century Arabia. And I think that's what Daud was kind of highlighting, the fact that this was a long time ago and this was the practice at the time. However, widespread social norms don't inherently equate to moral acceptability. So as far as I'm concerned, there are some things that as human beings that we have always at some level understood to be evil, to be not conducive to society. And it's my argument that having sex with a child is one of those things. Again, just to reference to childhood here, we have this hadith which clearly highlights this. This was a girl playing with dolls who had not reached the age of puberty. Just going to give a bit of background onto that issue. Children cannot meaningfully consent to sex or lifelong relationships. Every study has shown this. You cannot expect a child of limited age to have any concept of marriage or relationships, and particularly of sex. Medical research shows that sexual activity at that age poses physical health risks. I've worked in this sector, so I know exactly what they're talking about here. There's physical damage done to a child who engages in sexual intercourse because the child's body has not developed yet. It hasn't reached a point in its maturity where it can engage in sexual activity without physical harm occurring, particularly long-term physical harm, which I'm going to talk about later on. Let's talk about the psychological trauma and long-term emotional consequences are also common. Again, we know from experience, every person that has had sex at a very young age, there's been some psychological trauma associated with it. I mean, every study has shown this throughout cultures. Children that engage in sex, there is long-term psychological issues with that particular young child. The fact, again, going back to Dawood's point, that it was potentially normal for the time, does not remove the ethical issue of exploitation or harm. There are many things in the past. You mentioned slavery. This was the norm at one point. Now it's frowned upon. At one point, we used to put children in chimneys in this country and send them up chimneys at a very young age. We realized that was wrong. And we stopped doing it. At the time, that was seen as perfectly okay. And I'm sure the people that were engaging in that behavior and sending kids up there, we would condemn those people for doing it now because it was wrong. Regardless of whether or not they knew it was wrong, we now know that it was wrong to do that. Let's look at the definition of child sexual abuse. It's the deliberate engagement of a child by a person in a position of authority and trust, parent, family member, older sibling, other caregiver, in sexual activities for which the child is developmentally unprepared and cannot give informed consent. Now, there's no way on earth that we could assume that Aisha, at 6 years of age, was able to give consent to marriage, and at 9 years of age, give consent to sex. There's no basis that anyone could suggest that happened. Another, I mentioned before about the long-term effects of a child engaging in sexual behavior. There's been many studies that show that children that have been engaged in sexual misconduct tend to be infertile. I mentioned the long-term physical and psychological ramifications, but the medical ones are there also. And anyone can take the time to study this for themselves. Children that engage in that have been forced into early sex tend to be infertile. So is it a coincidence that Aisha did not have any children? I'll leave that for you, people to perhaps ponder. I think that there may have been a correlation there, personally, between the fact that she did not have any children and the fact that she was forced into a sexual relationship before under the age of 10. Now, the issue for me is this role model dilemma. Muhammad is seen by Muslims as, I can't pronounce that, the perfect human and a model for all time. His actions are often cited in defense of religious or legal practices. If his actions include consummating a marriage with a child, it complicates his role as a timeless ethical example. There is danger in idolizing actions that by today's standards would be considered abusive. Now, I want to talk about the consequences and the ramifications for this type of behavior, because what we see now is there's places in the world now, we have Iraq, we have Afghanistan, where people are advocating for the child marriage of 9-year-olds. Okay? Now, most of the planet Earth finds that deplorable, which gives you a consensus that as human beings, we find the idea of a child engaging in marriage with a child deplorable. The consequences, the lack of education, the psychological trauma, none of that justifies a child getting married at 9 years of age. There's no religion that can justify that. Morally, it is wrong. Because no one here who has children would even entertain the idea of their 9-year-old daughter engaging in a marriage with a 54-year-old man. We know at our core that there's something morally wrong with that. The world knows it. That's why it's condemned. However, because Muhammad is a role model for some Muslims, it makes sense for them to continue this heinous behavior. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing children in some of these Muslim-led lands. We see it in Iraq and Afghanistan, where girls as young as 8, 9 years of age are now engaging in marriage. I'm going to stop there for now, and I'm going to play a video just supporting what I said, but I may not do that. But I'm going to stop right now, so you can remove it from the stage, Nelson.
Okay. All right, hold on a second. Thanks for that. Appreciate that. Okay, now, so 3 minutes apiece. I'm gonna let brother Daud. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Hold on a second, Daud. Hold on a second. I'll let you know when to go. Yeah. Hold on a second. Okay, the timer is there. You guys can all see it. Daud, when you're ready, I'll start it. Yep. You can go.
Okay. Yeah. So, JM, I'm gonna expect a response to some of the things I'm gonna say now to you. One is you said it in your presentation yourself, and you said it quite loudly. You said, in today's standards, it would be abusive. It would be considered abusive in today's standards. And that's the crux of the matter of my rebuttal. Case by case, I did mention in my presentation that, yes, there is this idea of moral relativism where we can say, well, people used to say slavery was really bad. I did already preemptively dismantle that argument myself by saying that we have to look at things case by case. You can't look at all the moral ills and all the moral customs, and just because they're considered bad now, that all of them are also equally bad, because we are the arbiters of what is good and bad by today's standard. The studies, again, studies are very, very important. And I believe in studies, generally speaking. Obviously, it's always needs to understand where the studies come from, who, supports the studies. Is there any agenda behind it? But I think studies are very, very important. And one of the very, very important things about studies is that they are environmentally based, meaning everything that you just cited there has to do with things in the modern world. They absolutely don't mention anything historical. They do not consider societies historically whatsoever. These are studies that are concentrated and focused on the environmental issues around the issue of child marriage in the 20th century or whenever these studies were made. Also, you did say that there was an implication that you made about that Aisha was forced. You have to bring evidence for that she was forced. Your legal, your logical argument, I suppose, that you make in here is that she was a child, and because she was a child, she had no way to consent. I'm going to have to find evidence for that, because we're going to have to define what a child is. That's where we're going to have to go back first. That definition of a child. You mentioned Afghanistan as if Muslim countries are the only countries where these things happen. In fact, in this country, and I have evidence for this, in this country, in the UK, the age of consent, there has been groups of people who've been trying to lower the age of consent precisely because the age of consent goes back to the 18th century and was considering the social norms of the 18th century. They're saying, the age of consent is outdated. We need to change it. We need to lower it because of all these new ideas and concepts about the very fact.
And the 3 minutes is up, Brother Daud. So, JM, when you're ready, just start talking and I'll start the clock.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very difficult for me to actually try to engage with some of this stuff because there's a repulsion sitting in.
Can you just focus on the point, please?
I'm going to focus on it. The idea that you're saying that because with all the medical advancement, we now know the harm.
I didn't say that.
That underage sex has.
Please don't interrupt. Please don't interrupt, bro.
Apologies.
We know that thousands of years ago, they didn't have that knowledge. They had no concept of the harm having sex with a child would have on that child. Now we have medical advancements. We now know the consequences of a child psychologically, medically, physically, the consequences of a child engaging in sex with a grown man. They didn't know it back then. This idea that because something is bad now means that somehow this idea that because we consider it bad now and they didn't consider it bad then, that makes it okay for them to do it then. It's absolutely ridiculous. You mentioned slavery. Yeah, at that time, if you were around many years ago, you may have thought slavery was normal and okay. Now you don't. Why? Because now, through time, we can realize now that enslaving human beings is wrong. In time, we've realized that children having sex with adults is wrong. We now have evidence to support it, that it's wrong. So it's wrong. The fact that it happened years ago is no justification for it. How is that a justification? That because something was happening years ago, thousands of years ago, and they didn't know it was wrong, that meant it was right. That meant that it was acceptable. It wasn't acceptable then, and it's not acceptable now. And the idea that you asked me what a child is, if you don't know what a child is in this day and age, how could you even have a debate if you don't? If you can't accept what a child is?
No.
We know what a child is, and you know what a child is.
No, I don't.
So this idea that you don't know what a child is deflection. You know what a child is, and you know very well a child cannot consent to marriage and cannot consent to sex. They don't have the language or concept or understanding to know what these things are to consent to it. You read in the hadith that she was playing with dolls. That was some example of her experiences on earth. Playing as a child. How is a child playing with dolls understanding the concept, the intricacies of marriage and what her marriage duties are at 6 years of age and then consummating it at 9? You think she knew that she was having sex? What concept would she have had about what sex is and the ramifications of sex? According to the hadith, she may not have even had a puberty. So this idea that there was some ambiguity about whether or not consent was she consented, I find that unbelievable, to be honest. This is a child. This was a child engaging in inappropriate sexual relations with a grown man.
Yeah. Again. Yeah, you can start my time. So I'm just gonna say this one time. Let's just focus on this and please answer my question. It's my I mentioned this. You have to answer my questions.
You haven't
It's
asked a
not
question.
about it's not about I
haven't
don't want
asked
to
me a
or we both know. No,
You
I
haven't
don't know
asked
what
me
you
a
know.
question. You haven't
Okay,
asked me a
you're not
question.
gonna do back and forth either.
Guys,
Okay,
guys,
ask
guys,
me-
guys, guys, guys. Hold on,
Don't
hold
say
on,
that
hold
I
on,
haven't
hold on,
answered. But don't say I
hold
haven't
on.
asked me.
Let's-
You haven't asked me a question yet.
You start my time.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Hold on a second, guys. All right, James is saying that a question hasn't been asked. So when I'm going to start the timer again, brother Daud, please, this time around, please, JM, no interrupting, and brother Daud, if you can ask the question clearly, so that brother JM can respond to it. All right, we're going to start the timer again.
On his own time, on time, you can respond.
Of course,
okay.
absolutely, yeah. Of course, he's not going to respond now. No one interrupts anyone's 3 minutes, please. All
Thank
right.
you.
When you start speaking, brother Dawood, I'll start.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, JM, you have to answer my question. Every single question I ask. It doesn't matter how if you think they're ridiculous or not. You're gonna have to define today what a child is, and then we're gonna look at the definition of a child. JM, you are talking about the world knows today what how bad these evils were, and you keep bringing slavery in. I do not want to talk about slavery today. I want to talk about this in particular. You say the world knows today what is bad and how bad it is. But you're also the person that says the world back then didn't know what was right or wrong. You're saying just because the majority of people were doing it back then, it doesn't mean it's correct. So it's a fallacy. And the fallacy here is that you're appealing to your contemporary time. You're saying today we all know, but back then all of them didn't know. So that's a fallacy. The other thing is that my attack on your studies is not on the methodology. It's not about the fact that we have more tools and technology to do these studies. That's not my attack. My attack is on the fact that your studies that you're citing are not historical. They're not historic. They have nothing to do with what happened in the 7th century Arabia. Unless you can find someone, I'm sure that some historians were looking at late antiquity. In fact, I have some stuff today that I will present later. Scholars who look at the late antiquity, understand the culture, understand how children were behaving, understand the development of children, and then do a study on it. Then we can have a conversation. But right now, you're using modern terms to define something that happened in the past. And this is precisely what I'm saying. I'm not saying that we cannot have an opinion on what happened in 7th century Arabia. I'm saying before we have an opinion, we have to understand what was happening in 7th century Arabia. And all you've done with your study was you're looking at organizations who operate in the 20th century, 21st century, who are looking at situations across the globe. You mentioned Afghanistan, you mentioned Iraq. All these countries did not exist in the 7th century. This is a modern phenomena which needs a modern approach to it. And if you want to talk about that, we can have a debate about that. But today we're having a debate about whether PDF is moral in context, and you brought the presentation yourself, in context to our understanding, to what happened, to the understanding in the 7th century. I'm trying to say, please qualify what tools are you using to be consistent, where you can stand here in 2024 and look at people back then and say you're wrong. What techniques are you using? Or yeah.
So I mentioned before that we have studies that show what the consequences are. Again, this is part of my role in social services. We are acutely aware of the consequences of a child particularly before the age of puberty, engaging in sex with an adult. We know the medical consequences of it. We know the psychological consequences of it. And we know the physical consequences of it. The physical ones are particularly heinous because the child is not fully grown into their adult body yet. Their private parts are not matured enough to engage in sex. So the rupturing of especially a young girl's private parts, when it hasn't formed, can lead to irreparable damage. We know this. Medical science has shown us this. We also know the psychological ramifications of a prepubescent child engaging in sex with an adult. The pain associated with sex that women feel, virgins feel, is excruciating. This is an adult, a young adult that has an understanding of what pain is, and has an understanding of what she's engaging with, even though it's excruciatingly painful. A child has no concept of what sex is, let alone the excruciating pain a child would feel, particularly a child who hasn't physically developed. Her sense pain receptors haven't developed to which she can. That's why you notice a child will fall on the floor and cry, because their pain receptors haven't developed yet. So these are some of the reasons I can give as to why I'm saying with clarity that engaging in sex with a child is wrong then, and it's wrong now.
Are you've got 1 minute left? Do you want to continue?
I just want to get my questions out now.
Okay, so should I stop? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Brother Daud, it's your. Whenever you're ready, I'll start the timer.
Okay. So you mentioned that there are the studies that you mentioned, and by the way, I'm still waiting for your definition of what a child is. You said, yeah, you have to answer that question.
I can answer it right now if you want.
Okay, well, yeah, you had 1 minute left.
A child below puberty, a human being below the age of puberty.
Okay.
Okay. Should I continue?
Yeah.
Guys, no interruption, because that's what we agreed, guys. Yeah. No interruptions. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Please. If you need to make notes, please make notes. But no interruptions. I like to keep it 3 minutes, so no one complains. All right. Okay. Continue, bro.
Okay. So basically, you mentioned your study, and you said that psychological ramifications. And if you know anything about, or whenever someone cites psychological ramifications, what is considered when it comes with psychological ramifications are the environment that the child exists. Meaning, a lot of child abuse happens through family members, for example, right? People that trusted in care homes, all these places where child abuse happen, or child sex abuse happens, is because of that. And now, if you consider the environment, and if you could consider that these children are being put into people's care, and then that care is being used and abused, and rape happens most of the times in these scenarios, which explains the physicality behind it. It's because it's usually to do with child exploitation, meaning children are exploited, children are put into. In fact, a lot of child abuse in underage sex happens through child what's it called? Child human trafficking. Yeah, an overwhelming amount of these things. Child pornography is one of those big issues that we're facing in the modern world, and this is why you have all of these byproducts of psychological abuse and physical abuse. It's because of that. Now, again, this is what I'm trying to say. I'm saying something very, very simple. I'm saying I do not dismiss this study. If I was to read the study, I probably would agree with a lot of it. But also, what would happen if I was to read the study, I would see that the people who are looking at these cases are particularly looking at the bedrock of the modern world. And that is very, very important, because that determines the rest of it. It determines how everything else is seen, viewed, and analyzed. So as long as we are not able to find a historical, because we're talking about an historical figure. If we're talking about historical figure, then we need to have a method to analyze these historical figures. It is true that generally speaking, you know, puberty happens from the age of 9 and onwards.
And that's it. That's 3 minutes is up. JM, when you're ready, I'll start your timer.
So I also have questions, and I also, like Daud, would like quick responses. So my first question would be, what do you determine to be a child?
Okay, a child is someone, or a child is actually divided into 3 periods. Okay, so you have children who come under the age of toddlers, right? So this is infancy, okay, and then in the middle you have pre-birthing children. This is usually prior to their puberty. And then you have pre-adolescent children. This is from the age of 12, typically onwards to the age of 13. So they're all children, but they're all differently categorized.
Okay, so now we've got that established. What is I can't use the word pedophile. I think that's what the word is. PDF. Sorry, PDF.
Yeah.
Sorry. What is that?
So I have a definition here that I go by, and it's very similar to what I was saying early on. PDF is a paraphilia, meaning it's a disorder, and this is it's a in recent versions formally diagnosed coding system, which I mentioned before, DSM-5 and ICD-11. PDF is distinguished from a pedophilic disorder. So it's defined by a pattern of arousal accompanied by either subjective distress or interpersonal difficulty of having acting upon this arousal, and it's also a persistent urge that exclusively focuses on pubescent children. If you are, for example, someone who's attracted to toddlers, you have a different term for that. And if you're attracted to people who are 12 and 11 and 13, you have a different term for that either. So being a PDF, it's again, it's a social term that we use, but if you medically look at it and according to research, it becomes much more complicated.
Okay, so a man that has girlfriends around his own age, has been married, but has sex with a 9-year-old child, would you consider that person a PDF file?
He is definitely engaged in an act of PDF.
Okay.
But medically, he wouldn't have not been considered a pedophile in a classical sense.
But you would determine him to be one.
Yeah, I would say that he's definitely acted upon, like he's engaged in PDF activity. Yeah. And
you also mentioned you have to have a desire for a child.
A persistent desire, yeah. A persistent desire.
So persistent desire would be a desire that you would consummate. Would that be considered a consistent desire?
Persistent desire means that it's because it's classified as a disorder. It means you almost can't help yourself, and it is something you keep going back to over and over again.
Okay, so by the definition we used, I'm sure you would agree that Muhammad will fall into the category of a PD. That word
PDF.
PDF. By the criteria you've used, we've established that it could be someone that had relationships with older women. We've established it could be someone that also would have sex with someone around the ages of 8, maybe 9. We've established that, and we've also established something that would be continuous. So Muhammad continually had sex with Aisha. So
well, she wasn't 9 years old for like 20 years.
Yeah, but he continued having sex from the age of 9. So also her 9, but also her 9-year-old, while she was 9, he continually had sex with her. Yeah, it makes sense to establish that she was his wife after all. So under the criteria that you've established, how can you not? Why is it Why would I be considered wrong for identifying Mohammed as a PDF file? Under the criteria that we both established as being quite acceptable in identifying a PDF file, we've also can establish that he, with his actions, correspond to to an example of PDF file. So can you explain why I'm wrong now for identifying him as one?
Okay, you done, because then I can talk.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it. You're done, yeah. Just Jam. Just remember, guys. The way I'm doing things is, I'm stopping every time a question.
Oh, you're stopping every time a question. Okay, I get it. Yeah.
No, I'm stopping every time a question is asked, because depending on how long that person takes to answer, it could go on and take up all your time. So I'll do the same thing for Daud. If Daud asks you a question, I'll stop his time and then let JM answer and continue, because otherwise it's not going to be fair. Now, JM, you still got a little bit of time there. If you want to use it, it's up to you. I know you've asked Daud a question. If you don't, if you want to say no, okay, I'll give it to Daud.
What was the question again, please?
So we've established what a PDF file is. We had some criteria that we both agreed on. The fact that they could have relationships with older women, the fact that they would be also engaging in sex with a child or an 8 or 9 year old, and also the persistent sexual acts with an 8 or 9 year old. We've established that as being a criteria for someone that we would both identify the PDF file. Why would I be wrong for identifying Mohammed as a PDF file? Is that first question. The second question is, at what age do you think Mohammed had a sexual attraction to Aisha? Was it 6, 7, 8, or 9?
Time's up. Okay, those two questions were asked. Okay, Brother Dawood, whenever you're ready, I'll start your timer. And if you do have a question after you've answered these questions, then I'll stop the timer. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's go.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, we did read that one of the definitions is that there's a persistent urge, almost uncontrollable urge to wanting to have intercourse with children. As we know, the Prophet Muhammad SAW was not married to another 9-year-old. We know that he never had, it's not mentioned anywhere that he had intercourse with any more 9-year-old at his time, even though people didn't consider it a bad thing. So to say that he was somehow persistently engaged in this act, or he was like he particularly was attracted to the age or someone that was 9 years old, it's not being proven by any given context or history that we have, because the Prophet in fact had multiplier women, and the majority of them were actually around his age. So, and also we didn't establish anything. And this is why I asked you the question about children and child, and we will get to that in more, because as I was reading the definition earlier on, and I talked about the popular usage of PDF in society, that people use it quite freely. But when we talk about, if we want to talk about this in a debate, I want to be very clinical about what it is that we're talking about. So in popular usage, yeah, you can get away with it. If we were in a pub, this conversation would have run really well, but we are here in a debate. The word pedophilia is often applied to any sexual interest in children or act of sexual abuse, right? This is usually how we understand pedophilia in popular usage, including any sexual interest in minors. Okay, what are minors? We talk about that a lot later on. Below the local age of consent, meaning below. So the definition is as below the local consent of age. People below the local consent of majority, okay, regardless of their level of physical or mental development. Okay, so physical or mentality is not considered here. What is considered is the local age of consent, because we have something called the local age of consent, where very young girls are allowed to have intercourse. I would say 15, 14, 12, in some countries like Mexico, is very early to have sexual intercourse, but it's legally fine to have so. And this leads me to the next question, and it's a twin question. Once we define what childhood is, and you said childhood, why is it that children are defined differently at different periods, and why is the age of sexual consent different in different periods and different eras?
Okay, that's it. That's 3 minutes up. Jim, when you're ready, I will start your timer.
I think it's important to note that my second question wasn't answered.
Okay, sorry, remind me.
Yeah, when was Muhammad sexually attracted to Aisha? Was it age 6, 7, 8, or 9?
It was 9. He consummated the marriage at 9, not at 6.
So you don't think he was sexually attracted to her before 9?
Probably not. No.
What's your evidence to suggest that wouldn't be the case?
They didn't live together. She was played. She was how the responsibility placed upon her were totally different. She was still viewed as a member of the youth, and not as someone compatible for marriage at that time when she was 6.
So between the ages of 6 and 9, she moved from youth to, what would you consider her?
To a young woman, yeah.
A young woman at 9 years of age.
Around at that time, yes. Yeah.
Okay. So what am I doing now, Nelson?
Well, it's your 3 minutes.
I did ask you questions. I did ask you 2 questions.
Brother Daud did ask you some questions as well, but it's up to you. It's your 3 minutes. You can do whatever you want to do with it. If you don't want to continue,
I like to address so the thing is, I don't know why there's this kind of constant need to reference to the child, the sexual limit of throughout the world. There's different ages of consent. Every country that has different ages of consent will also have a law regarding pedophilia. So this idea that there's some correlation between one country have a lower age of consent than another. Both of those countries would have an understanding of what pedophilia is. That the idea of having sex with a child is wrong. And there are hadiths that suggest that Aisha was not pubescent, by the way, and I'm sure that Daud is aware of that. Okay, it is not definitive that she was pubescent when the marriage was consummated. We know this. Daud knows this. So this idea that there's some kind of correlation between the age of consent and pedophilia is nonsense. It's completely nonsensical.
Sorry, guys. I'm looking. Apologies, guys. I'm looking for my charger because my laptop is about to die. Oh, flip's sake. Yeah. Okay. I did listen. I did hear what you said. Yeah.
Jen, so you're done, yeah? You're done?
Yeah.
Did you? Can you reply to my questions though?
I did. I just replied to it.
Oh yeah. So what was my question?
Right.
I asked.
Brother Daud, I'm going to start your timer. When you ask a question, please just ask a direct question, okay?
Yeah.
And then I'll stop the time and let JM answer it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. The question was, why is it that there seems to be a change in how we understood what a child is throughout history, and also why is the age of consent changing? If there is something objective about it.
Right. So I'll repeat it. So regardless of the age of consent, every country has a concept of what pedophilia is and the adverse effect of having sex with children. So even in countries where there's low ages of sex, let's say Mexico, for example, there's still people in prison in Mexico for pedophilia. So it has bringing up the age of consent has nothing to do with this issue. Pedophilia is illegal and it's wrong. And I've kind of explained why it's wrong. It's interesting that you focus on the psychological ramifications of why it's
You're
wrong.
not answering my question, by the way.
I am answering it. You asked me, you're talking about the age of consent, and I'm saying to you, why?
No, I'm saying, why is it changing? Why is it changing? Why is it that 200 years ago they understood it this way, 50 years ago they understood it this way, and now the argument maybe even to go back? Why is it changing?
The reason why it would have changed in the first place is because of medical science would have indicated that having children engaged in sex is not good for their physical, psychological, and medical health. That probably was why it was changed. That's my answer. That's probably why it was changed. Yeah.
Daud?
Yeah. Okay. So if that's the case, how do you explain that the Guardian published an article in 2013 where the Parliament was actually debating to change the age of consent to back to 13 or 12? And the reason why they were doing that was because of, like you were saying, additional information that was presented. So that's my response to that, and then you can answer that that question. So how's that happening? So there's more information. There's scientists, activists. They're realizing, oh, look, there's this thing in society where there's young girls, they're having sex too early. And those laws that we've passed about the age of consent in this country are from the 18th century. So why we can't go by that anymore? We have to kind of go back again.
Okay, so
that's my question. That's my question. But you can answer in your own time. The other thing I wanted to say is that so you subhanallah. Okay, so when you think you said, oh yeah, that's what you said. You said, oh, the reason why there's a different age of consent. I don't see the correlation between the two, but you say the reason why there's a difference of age consent is because everyone understood what PDF is. Well, not everyone understands what PDF is, precisely because PDF is understood differently elsewhere. It's understood differently because it's bound by the age of consent, meaning that if a person of a particular age or particular position of power goes and sleeps with someone that is much younger than themselves, they will be considered a PDF because it's bound by the age of consent. In fact, child abuse, according to law, right? In some countries, child abuse offenders are not considered pedophiles unless they have a primary or exclusive sexual interest in pubescent children. You know, that's actually one of the things when it comes to the legality of this, that they aren't even considered that, because a pedophile, again, it's a disorder. And this is the thing. This is what I wanted to say. If and I want to also understand where your definition of PDF comes from, because the definition of PDF is considered a disorder. If it's a disorder, how can morality? So there's two questions.
Okay, guys, listen. We're gonna do another back and forth for another 15 to 20 minutes, and then we're gonna call it a day as far as the debate goes. So far, it's been going great. Thanks for keeping it respectful. And JM, it's your turn. You've got 3 minutes. If you ask a question, I will stop your time. If not, I will just let your time run. Okay. So go ahead, address whatever you want to address, and you've got free. If you don't want to continue with 3 minutes, just let me know.
So I thought it was interesting that Daud brought up the fact that some people were trying to advocate for the lowering of the age of consent. I'm going to go back to that Guardian and I'm going to give you what happened in that case.
Yeah, I'll send you the link. Yeah.
I'm reading from the article now. It said Downing Street gave the proposal short shrift. A spokesman told the BBC, "We reject the call to lower the age of consent. Current age is in place to protect children, and there are no plans to change it." So why you brought it up, I don't understand what point you were making. You actually reinforced my point, because when some lunatics tried to bring that forward, the government in there, I guess because they have more knowledge, they have people that they can speak to them that are more knowledgeable in the medical field, and they more have access to information. They said, no, we're not going to do that, because that actually takes away the protection of what? Of children. So that's to your first question. The second question was regarding, so you just quickly remind me your second question.
The second question was if it's for the second question is twofold. How do you define PDF? Where are you getting the authoritative definition for it? Because I want to know if because the way we understand PDF today in today's world is that it's in disorder. If it's a disorder, right? If it's a disorder, how can we speak of morality?
Okay, so a paedophile is a person who's sexually attracted to children. Okay, that's what a paedophile is, and that's not me making it up. Anyone could do a quick search and you can find that as a definition. That's what it is. And morally, to be sexually attracted to children is wrong. As simple as that. Morally, it's wrong. It's morally wrong to be, and I've explained why. A child, let's just go to, because I noticed before you didn't want to touch on the medical and physical aspects of a child having sex. I noticed you only focused on the psychological one.
No, I addressed it.
And I know why you did that. Because as I've mentioned before, a young girl's private parts are not fully developed at 9 years of age, 6, 7, 8, 9 years of age, to engage a man of 54 years of age. I know that from the work that I've done. I know the consequences, the physical consequences of a child that age having sex. Her private parts are irreparably ruined. They have to undergo lifelong surgery sometimes. There's infertility that comes with that. I highlighted in my PowerPoint, which again you didn't address. Why is there a high likelihood of infertility with children that have sex at that age? Because internally and externally, they're not physically prepared to have sex with a man at that age. That's why it's morally wrong. Because it causes harm to the child. That's why it's morally wrong.
And that's it. It's now it's Brother Daud.
Yeah.
It's your turn. Whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, cool. So I did actually answer your question. I'm not trying to avoid it. So therefore, I'll start off with that. I did talk about the physicality of child abuse. And one thing that you are not telling the people is that the majority of cases, when we think about child pre-person sexual activity and why there's so much harm involved with it, is because there's a considerable amount of children who are sex trafficked and abused in the process of it. It's a very violent process. It's not a marriage. These children who are being harmed here, are being harmed in cases like human trafficking and prostitution and all these things. Okay. And yes, there are, of course, some cases where child marriages exist. They're very minute and they exist all over the world. They exist in America. I have statistics for that, even in the 21st century, that in America, so-called child marriages still happen. It happens in Mexico, it happens in South America, it happens in places in the Muslim world also. I'm not going to hide this. And also the fact that you said that some lunatic was trying to push for lowering the age of consent. I have the studies actually here. I can read it to you. And the lunatic that you referred, I don't know why you said lunatic, because you said that with loads of authority. This was in 2014, cited a Home Office, because you said the government would be against it, right? A Home Office report that recommended lowering the age of consent in line with lowering age puberty, the lowering age of puberty, meaning kids are entering puberty much more quicker. There was a observation made. The report suggested that sexual behavior with girls over the age of 13, the average age of puberty, is not criminal, provided that she was clearly as aware of what she was doing, and it's an implication as might be expected of the girl. Although this report of sexual offenses, consent, and sentencing was written in 1979 and is bound up with a number of concerns about the influence of beautiful information exchange at this time, the idea of lowering the age puberty should lead to changes in sexual consent, and it still lingers, meaning the debate is still there. I'm not shying away from this. All I'm saying is this. there are reports that show that there was a transformation that took place with Aisha's body. In fact, okay, there was a time when she was playing those, and there was a time when she wasn't playing anymore. She had no interest in playing with games with those, and there's also a time where her body was changing. Okay, there's
And
hadith.
that's it. That's 3 minutes. 3 minutes are up. JM, when you're ready.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that just going back to that same issue with the lunatic. So the lunatic in question was a guy called Professor John Ashton. He was the president of the Faculty of Public Health. When he proposed this, and again, this is me reading, Downing Street and Nick Clegg joined forces to reject the call. Okay, they rejected it outright. So yes, it was a lunatic that tried to bring down that age of consent, and the government had the sense to reject that claim outright. I think it's important that everyone understand that Daud has admitted to the fact that Mohammed was a PDF file. I'll show you how he admitted it. He tried to make the suggestion that if Mohammed had sex with another 9-year-old, that would have made him a PDF file.
No, I didn't.
Why? Oh, let me finish. Why would the act of sleeping with another 9-year-old? This is he said this. The act of him sleeping with another 9-year-old have made him a PDF file. So sleeping with the 1 9-year-old, he's not a pedophile, a PDF file. Sleeping with another 9-year-old, according to Daud, that would make him a PDF file. I want everyone here to understand what type of logic is being used here. And that type of logic, I believe, is what reinforces the issue I made in my presentation. That if he is supposed to be the leading example, any excuse will be made for his behavior. But now and again, when you push it, they'll slip up. And to me, that was an example of that was slipping up. Because if there was no concept of him being a PDF file, why would he mention the fact that if he had another 9-year-old wife, that would make him a PDF file? If he slept with another 9-year-old, that would have made him a PDF file. Where's the logic in that? So sleeping with one doesn't make you a PDF file, but sleeping with 2 does? That doesn't make any sense.
You land there? Okay. Dawood, when you're ready, I'll start the time.
Okay, so I did not say all of this. That's him piecing things together. What I did say was that if we look at how legally people define PDF today, this is why I cited this. And I said, and I was basically inviting, I was playing devil's advocate, inviting his way of looking at the past, because I've already categorically many times in this debate said, JM, you have not provided a viable way how to look at 7th century and use your 20th century studies and sensibilities to successfully transfer that to the 7th century. You still have not found a way to do that. Because if we're talking about a contemporary case, if we're talking about something that's happening in up north somewhere in England, which is unfortunately happening, if we're talking about child abuse in Vietnam, if we're talking about child abuse in Philippines today, then we can have a conversation about that, given the framework. But we're talking here about a historical figure where children, I've already shown you that, and I'll read these quotes, that the understanding of what a child is has changed. The understanding of age of consent keeps changing. And you keep saying some lunatic. It's a home office cited study. The Home Office took that study and made the claim. It was not some crazy guy. And you can look this. That's an article for anyone who's watching, The Guardian 2014. Type in 2014 Home Office, a study looking into lowering the age of consent. And David Cameron at that time, he refused. He didn't give in. But that was not the point. The point was there are people of power, people of influence, who can even bring it to make a motion. It's not some fringe groups who have no power and influence. These are people who have enough power and influence to make a national debate. And so this conflation that he's making here, that I'm saying, well, I'm basically, to be very clear, I refuse your premise. I refuse the premise from the get-go. I don't believe that Aisha, when the marriage was consummated, that she was considered a child. I don't believe that. Nor do I believe that the Prophet Muhammad SAW had a tendency to be attracted to children, and from whatever like a child was identified. Well, I actually have also here quotes about how children were what constituted a child in late antiquity, because that's the time the Prophet was along, and people were married
And
12 and younger. Okay, so
time's up. JM, your 3 minutes are up whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea that you're actually trying to suggest that because powerful people are wanting to lower the age of consent, that's somehow something we should take in consideration. Have you ever heard of a pedophile ring? Have you heard of Jeffrey Epstein? Those are powerful people. I'm sure they would have wanted to lower the age of consent because they had sex with children. So that argument that you gave forward is, I mean, that's another one of those arguments that I just don't, and it just making itself look worse by saying that. Again, you could go back to the article that you mentioned, The Guardian. People could go back and look at the article.
you're talking about something else. We're not talking about the same thing.
Bro,
We'll talk about the article again. It says literally that there was one man that brought it forward. He was head of that facility, and he's the one that brought it forward, the lunatic, and he was shut down by government. Why was he shut down? Because they wanted to protect children. But yeah, you keep referencing the 7th century. Now, people could go back and listen to this, so you're not doing yourself any favors by denying it. You said specifically in your trying to suggest that Muhammad was not a PDF file, you said the fact that it was a perpetual, and you used the example of the fact that he had other wives that were older, and then you said if he slept with another 9-year-old.
I didn't say that.
Please.
I just urge people to go back and watch the recording. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to urge people to go back and watch the recording, and they will hear from yourself that you used the concept of him having sleeping with another 9-year-old as evidence that he was not a PDF file. You literally used as evidence that he was not a PDF file by stating that he did not sleep with another 9-year-old, thereby admitting to the fact that he was a PDF file, because you wouldn't have used it as an argument to suggest that he wasn't one. So you lost the debate, my friend. You lost the debate. With that statement alone,
stick to the points. Just stick to the points.
That is the point. My point is that statement.
No, don't do this.
Please, don't interrupt. Don't interrupt, Daud.
Yeah, he needs to stick to the point.
That statement you made is me sticking to the whole point of the debate. That's the whole point of the debate. It's morally wrong. Okay, and you admitting that if you slept with another 9-year-old, which everyone could go back and watch this recording and hear you say it, it's evidence that he was a PDF file. Not only is it evidence of that, it's evidence that it's morally wrong because you use the word PDF file, which you acknowledge is morally wrong. You acknowledge that being a PDF file is morally wrong. Yet you stated that if Muhammad had slept with another 9-year-old, he would have been a PDF file.
Okay. Daud, this is your 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I will spare people I will spare people from doing that. You don't have to go back. I will just repeat what I said again. And this time, Jen, please listen very carefully. I am not saying that if the Prophet had slept with another, we would have made him a PDF. I'm saying, I'm granting the definition. Okay, I'm playing devil's advocate. Okay, here. That's what I said I was doing. Because from the top of the conversation, I refuse the premise. I refuse the premise from the get-go. This is why I'm asking you about what a child constitutes. That's why I'm asking you, why is there an arbitrary way of establishing what the age of consent is? Why are these things changing? Why do you keep these things changing? Why is a person that says that is indirectly telling you, I reject the premise. I reject the premise that Aisha was 9 years old. And the point that I was making about, well, according to the definition that is to do with legality today, and I read the quote. The quote was, a person is not considered medically a PDF if he's not exclusively attracted to a woman, to a girl. And again, so what you're saying is different from what I'm saying. I'm not saying that. I've played the devil's advocate, and I'll leave that behind. I'll be very direct what I'm saying. I'm saying to you, I reject the premise because you have not established, again, why is the concept of a child changing, GM? Why is it changing? Why are children not considered children in the 16th century? Why is a 10-year-old girl, basically what I'm trying to say to you is, what is the objective? What is the objective measure that we are using? You can't use technology. We use technology to do all sorts of things. We also use technology to do bad things, right? Technology cannot be. What is the moral objective measure that you're using to say today we are more right than people 500 years ago? Why? Why, GM? Why? Where's that coming from? Where you pulling this from? Because when we look into the Bible, there is no age of consent when it comes to marriage. Marriage is very similar to the Quran, is defined by the maturity of the child, meaning it's a case-by-case situation. Okay, the maturity of the child that is determined by the society, is determined by the father. That's in the Bible. And that's what I'm trying to say to you. If you carefully listen to me, I am saying the way we understood, or the way they understood children, is not the same way we understand children. And therefore, and this is the presentism. I started off my opening remarks that you are engaging in presentism.
Okay, listen, guys, we're going to do 2 more rounds, and that's going to be the end of the debate. So 2 more rounds, 2 more back and forths, and then that's it. And we're going to have a final thoughts, and that will be the debate done. All right, guys. Yeah. Okay, JM, it's on you.
Yes, I think it's important for people to remember that at the beginning of this debate, Daud had a very clear definition of what pedophilia is.
Can you repeat that, please? That's the question I'm asking you. Repeat my definition, please.
Your definition. Yeah. I can't go do it verbatim, but it was to do with a persistent attractive. The reason why I'm bringing it up, this is why I'm bringing it up. He said it was something to do with a persistent attraction to children, and he used that as his basis for what a PDF file is. What I did is I gave him a scenario. I said a married man that has many relationships with women old around his age, he then engages in one act of sex with a child. Is he a PDF file? What was Daud's answer? Yes, he is. Yes, he is. So I didn't mention persistency. I mentioned one incident of sex with a child. You confirmed he was a PDF file. This happened. we all heard it.
Can you just debate? You like
please.
Can you remind him please just debate, because he's not debating right now.
Please, Daud, it's just 3 minutes. He can do whatever he wants in his 3 minutes, just like you.
We had agreements.
Yes.
We had agreements.
Daud, if he's not responding to whatever questions or whatever, you can address that afterwards. You can ask him directly as well. And I'll stop your time when you do ask him directly. Just let the brother finish. Yes, Jim, go ahead.
Right, as I was saying. So he's asking me about what the definition of a pedophile is. I said to sexual attraction to children. I already said that. His definition was more initially, it was about persistent attraction to children. I then gave him a scenario. In that scenario, I highlighted a man that had sex with women around his age, one act of sex with a child, okay? And I used the age of 8 and 9 in my scenario. Is that an act of PDF file? He said, yes, it is. So he doesn't just believe it's about persistent sex with children or persistent attraction. He also believes that one act of sex with an 8 or 9-year-old is an act of that constitutes that person being a pedophile. So, I mean, he's arguing against himself at this point. He's literally arguing against yourself. I agree with you though on this point. Yes, it is. It's not always a persistent act, because what happens in most cases, they may have done it once. You can get caught, you go to prison. No one says to themselves, hold on a minute, has he done this multiple times? Is this persistent? No, the one act alone will get you condemned as a pedophile. So using the same logic, the Prophet Muhammad, he didn't just have one act of sex with a 9-year-old. He had continuous sex with a 9-year-old. So in both of your criteria, in both the criteria that you put forward, the persistent attraction, and then you agreed to the one-off sex with a child as an act of pedophile, he fits both. He fits both.
Okay. And this is yeah.
Yep. Go ahead, Daud.
So before I start, because I need to go back to the points that we're making, yeah. So so one of the things that we said is that if the person doesn't understand what I said, to ask for a definition for what I was asking instead of speaking for myself, because you're wasting time. And clearly you have nothing. Your tank is out of tank. You keep mentioning the same thing over and over again. I will read again. I will spare people, and I will give you the definition. It had nothing to do, or just to do with persistency. There was more. Okay, I said in popular usage, which you're using it in a popular usage sense. You're saying, well, a pedophile is someone that's attracted to a child. Well, we're debating here, and debate requires substance and nuance. That's what debate's about. And you're not bringing any nuance. You're talking as if we're in a pub, but we're not in a pub, GM. We're debating here, and I ask you, what is your definition depending on? You're saying, well, it's just common sense. Yeah, appeal to common sense. But like my common sense, clearly, it's not the same as yours. Because
guys, Jem, please.
My appeal. But I don't have the same common sense as you, and this is why I'm asking.
I didn't say common sense. Stop saying
JM, please he hasn't asked your question. Please let him finish.
And I've lost my thought of train, but I'm saying I've asked you particularly for the definition of what you're underpinning you. This is not a pub conversation. This is not a barbershop conversation. I want you to be very precise, because we're informing people here. Okay, so in popular usage, which you're using, you keep using, yes, it's used as pedophilia is often applied any sexual related interest in children or act of child sex abuse, including any sexual interest in minors, okay, below the local age of consent. Okay, that's how people generally, when they think about pedophilia, it's to do with the age of consent. Okay, now the other thing, I will give you what I said. I said pedophilia is a paraphilia. And people go Google what a paraphilia is. It means it's a disorder, okay? In recent versions of a former diagnostic coding system as DSM-5 and ICD-11, pedophilia is distinguished from pedophilic disorder. Pedophilic disorder is defined as a pattern of pedophilic arousal accompanied by either subjective distress or interpersonal difficulties of having acted upon this arousal. That's I agree with that definition of pedophilia. Okay, that's how I define it, and that does not apply to the Prophet Muhammad. You have to show me either you argue against this definition I've brought. Okay. And I've been fair to the people. I'm bringing people information for them to go back and not just saying, well, that's how it's commonly known. No, I'm bringing people information for them to go back. I'm being fair here. So unless you have a problem and you can systematically disagree with the definition I've given to you, you have to prove to me how that applies to the Prophet Muhammad. Please keep mentioning this whole thing about he slept with another 9-year-old. I reject the premise to begin with.
Okay, guys, this is the last round, and then we're going to go into our final thoughts. JM, go ahead. This is your last 3 minutes, and then Dawood is last 3 minutes, and then we'll go into final thoughts. All right. Jem, when you're ready.
Yeah, you're not going to get out of the fact that when I presented you with a scenario of a man having one act of sex with a child, you define that as an act of paedophile. You're not going to get around that. You can swerm around and talk about definitions. I gave you a scenario. In that scenario, it wasn't about persistent attraction. It's about one act of sex with a child. You determine that person to be a paedophile. So you agree that it's not just about, and the definition back this up, by the way. The definition literally says that. If you go to any definition of pedophilia, it talks about a person.
You haven't brought any definition.
Please, guys, please. Jem, go ahead.
If you go to any definition, you could go to the Merriam-Webster's definition. Have a look at what it says there. It literally says a psychiatric disorder in which an adult has sexual fantasies about or engages in sexual acts with a prepubescent child. And it also says that sexual perversion in which children are the preferred sexual object. So it applies to someone who has children as the preferred sexual object.
Yeah, precisely.
It also applies to anyone that engages in a sexual act with a child. And I'd be saying that's why I presented you with the scenario of the single act to highlight that point. And when I highlighted that point, you agreed with me. You said, yes, there is an act of paedophile. So again, I don't know, you're arguing against yourself here, because we can all hear the fact that you are agreeing to the continual perversion, a continual desire for children, and a single act. And I'm going to say it again, Muhammad, not only did he engage in the single act, we know that because he consummated with a 9-year-old, he continued to have sex with her. So in both definitions, what I want to ask you is, can you give an example of an act of pedophilia? Can you give me an example of one? 2 examples. Using both the definition, the criteria.
Yeah.
Can you give me a definition of both?
Yes. And this is a direct response to the point that you keep bringing up, that I agree to you. You asked me a very simple question. You didn't add any context, and I answered. And the context of my answer is, and I say this loud and clear, any man today, in today's world, okay, that is 50 or 60 years old and that wants to sleep with a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, to me is a pedophile. Yes. I would say this.
Can I follow up now, Nelson?
Okay.
Yep, you can continue.
So we have the answer. Any man that wants to sleep with an 8-9-year-old is a pedophile.
Yeah, in today's world. In today's world.
No. I don't want to add a time variant. I'm not going to add a time variant.
It's not up to you. That's my definition.
Okay. Take away the time variant.
No, you can't. It's my definition.
Why not? Okay, so I'll ask you this. So he's established the fact that only now, a 6-year-old having a child with a 9-year-old he considers them to be a pedophile. He considers them.
Okay.
What should be the punishment?
Okay.
So is that a question?
Yeah, that's a punishment. What should be the punishment?
I can respond in my own time.
Yeah, for a 60-year-old man to have sex with a 9-year-old. Now, what should be the punishment?
Okay.
Okay, Jem is done. I'll start. This is your last 3 minutes.
Yeah.
When you're ready, Daud, I'll start your timer.
Okay. Just give me a sec. Sorry. Okay. Okay. So, the reason why I was so bold about my statement about someone who today is 50 or 60 years old and has the urge to want to sleep with a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, why I would consider that person a pedophile is consistent with the philosophy, or my philosophy, that I have presented today, which is the philosophy that I am not engaged in presentism. I live today in the 21st century. I live in the UK. I like the majority of the laws. I love all the child protection laws that the UK has established. I have family members who are about 6 and 7 year old. I see them every day. I'm around them every day. They could not marry and run a household in UK 2025 because for me or for us collectively to get here, many things happen in society. Many changes happen in society. It doesn't necessarily mean it's better. It just means it's different. It's different the way we view ourselves, the way we view ourselves, and it's a continuum of debates. You know, I don't agree with the whole gender charade or how people want to change gender. Nevertheless, it is a debate. It's something that people are discussing. It's philosophy that is happening. In the same way, the way we understood children to be, or what a man constitutes to be, or the age of consent, all these things are quite fluid. And that's why I've asked JM, why is it that there are differences on how people define these things? If they were so written in stone, why are the differences? In fact, why is it that in the Bible, if we read in Ezekiel, right? Ezekiel 16:7-8, I have caused they to multiply, and but the field of increased and waxen great, and though to excellent ornaments, thy breasts are fashioned and thin hair grown, whereas thou wast naked bare. Now, okay, in this passage above from Ezekiel, we read that God's love story with Israel. He presents himself as a wealthy man who finds an infant girl who had just been born and is left for dead and field. He takes her and wards her in his home, and when she reaches puberty, meaning grows breasts and pubic hair, he declares that she's in love and she is to be taken as a wife. Okay, and puberty, as we know, in today's time, starts with 9 years old. It happens. It's a thing. So, as my closing remarks, what I'm trying to say is this: you don't have to agree with me, okay? You don't have to agree with me. But one thing I want you to take home from this is this: things are not as black as white as they are. And my definitions and my effort that I've put in today to show you how complex these things actually are should invite you to research more into this.
And that's it. Daud, listen, what we're going to do now is the final thoughts. So, Brother Daud, because you started first, so you go first. You give your final thoughts. And then Brother Jen will go after that. And then we're going to call it a day. All right. Thanks for keeping things very respectful and very civil. I really appreciate that. When you're ready, Brother Daud, for your final thoughts. How long should we play? Do you want to do 5 minutes or 3 minutes?
5 minutes is reasonable.
5
What do you
minutes,
think,
yeah? 5 minutes it is for each. All right.
Yeah, you okay with that?
Yeah.
Jam, are you all right with that?
Okay. Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. When you're ready, Daud, as soon as you start speaking, I'll start your time.
Yeah. I think my closing remarks is that, first of all, the viewers don't 1 minute, 2 minutes. What's happening? Okay. Yeah. You want to get to 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So what I wanted to say to people is that a lot of the people actually don't know that prior to this debate, there was a big debate and group chats are not always the best ways to talk about something as sensitive as we have today. And I think we did really well, in fact, to talk about something as sensitive, and because it's a sensitive topic on every level, on a societal level, people talking in the pubs, people talking in the parliament about this, and most certainly people talking about this on a live stream. I think I've made very clear my stance on things. I'm very, very much interested in history, and I look at history a lot, and there are tools how to understand history. And what I'm inviting you guys to do is by utilizing these tools, is it gives you a greater understanding, and a greater understanding does not always mean that you then magically agree. In fact, you could be using these historical tools or tools in general and find more holes in my argument. And this is what my presentation or my goal was today, is to let people know that unfortunately, there are conversations that have been hijacked by people, and not everyone has always the best interest. Not everyone is interested in finding out what is actually happening here besides of what I think is happening. You know, no, I want to be divorced from my culture, from my biases, from all these things that make me look at this thing in a very particular way, and I want to know what is exactly happening here and why is it exactly happening. And that's how I have conducted my research for many, many years. I've done this with the Bible, and my affinity for the Bible and my respect for the Bible grew because of that. Because I was, as a Muslim, I was like, I will look at the Bible and I will be biased. So I have to look at the Bible for what it is. And only then I might crack, you know, and see what is actually happening and how the Bible actually speaks and how it's preserved. And equally, when it comes to this subject, we mustn't underestimate the societal influence of groups for many, many, many decades in this country in particular, who've been encouraging people to look at Muslims in a very particular way, encouraging to look at people at Islam in a very particular way. Remember, the interest in Islam and the criticism in Islam was not born out of curiosity or research. It was born out of geopolitical realities, because of wars in the Middle East and because of retaliations and terrorism and all these things. These are the lenses that people are looking at Islam, and these are the lenses that they will look at other things as well. Now, I'm saying, look, there are things that I will stand 100% behind. If there's any of you today that says to me, yo, I have a car, let's go up north, there's a group of Muslims who are doing certain things, they're abusing women, and I will be the first person to stand there. I will be the first person to stand there. And if I had legal leeway, I would smack every single one of them people who call themselves Muslims, who abuse girls in this country. And I don't care, because when it comes to black people in the hood doing the chanking and selling the drugs, then everyone is happy. Yeah, it's black people. But the moment we want to say an ill that is within a particular community, like the Pakistani community that is suffering from this, or is participating in this, then we have to call it out. And I will call it out. And I'm doing it right now. I have no qualms about it. But we mustn't confuse that the ability to look at a historical event and conflate it with modern day politics. We cannot do that. We cannot do that. And this is why I was so vehemently against these studies and the way these studies were presented. We didn't read the studies to begin with. JM presented what he wanted to present, but I guarantee you, if you look into these studies, you will see an overwhelming amount of these cases have to do with child abuse and child trafficking, okay? Which inherently is a very violent business. It's a very violent environment. So my last 10 seconds, you don't have to agree with me, but what I want you guys to do is be more intelligent. Let's make this a decade of substance.
Okay. JM, thank you for that, Daud. Appreciate that, bro. JM, when you're ready, I'll start your time.
I think it was a good debate. It's a comfortable one. I do have respect for Daud for taking up the debate, because many Muslims wouldn't have this debate because it's a very sensitive issue. However, I do feel that a couple of things were established in this debate, which I believe kind of reflected badly. Number one, I think it was clear the idea that there's this question around why do we understand it to be bad now or not bad then? What right do we have? And the right we have is because now we have more knowledge. Knowledge is power. We now know that engaging children of that age in relationships, sexual relationships particularly, lead to harm of the child. We know this. I mentioned the three areas it harms. It harms them physically, it harms them psychologically, and it harms them medically as well, potentially. That's why, for example, I'm going to raise it again. More likely to be infertile if a child has had sex around that age, a woman. They would have known that back then. They would have had no concept that if I have sex with this 9-year-old, potentially she'd become infertile. Aisha didn't have any children. I mean, so this is knowledge. This is what happens when knowledge increases. When knowledge increases, it informs our decisions for the better. And this is an example of it. It doesn't mean that they are above condemnation because they didn't know. We know now, and we can condemn that behavior. The idea that this is me, perhaps the reason why I'm debating it on this issue is because through the lens of some anti-Muslim sentiment because of terrorism, etc. That's not the case. I mean, if you look at our chats, you can see many times I'm defending Muslims. I defend what happens in Palestine, for example. I'm very adamant that what's happening there is wrong and evil. So there's no, for me personally, I'm not talking about this through the lens of some anti-Muslim sentiment based on terrorism. So that's not what I'm here doing. I just generally believe that if you're presenting someone as the best example for a man to follow, who engage in that behavior, that's problematic for me. And we can see it's problematic because we still have people that are trying to actually continue that behavior now. That's why I mentioned Afghanistan and Iraq. We can see now that the men that are influenced by Mohammed, because he's their best example, are engaging in marriages with 9-year-old girls. That's not good. You can say, well, who am I to say so? I'll just refer back to the evidence, the medical evidence, the physical evidence, and the psychological evidence. That is what we can use to determine whether something's harmful to a child. That's how we determine it. If it causes harm, if the child is irreparably damaged from that behavior, that's justification enough to call it out for being immoral and for calling it out for being wrong. So yes, I do condemn you for challenging the grooming gang situation. I condemn that. I think it's admirable that you do that. Do I expect you to any Muslim to change their view on this issue? No, I don't, because again, that's your prophet, and he is the best example. I'm going to say this though, in closing. I believe that Jesus is God's son. I believe that he is my Lord and Savior. If Revelation came out tomorrow that said that he has sex with 8 and 9-year-olds, I will condemn him. And so be it. If I then lose favor in the afterlife, so be it. Because I know instinctively and intrinsically that having sex with a girl of that age is morally wrong. It causes harm to the child. You're putting the child in a state of terror doing that. I know that from the studies and by the way, the studies that I referenced had nothing to do with sex trafficking. Nothing to do with sex trafficking or whatever other example you use. You know what they were?
Well, you could have cited its quotes. He didn't do that.
There were cases of children that were being abused by loved family members.
I did mention that. Yeah.
That's who it was. So it wasn't, they weren't being trafficked. It wasn't being trafficked.
No, but I did mention that.
Okay, guys, 5 minutes is up. JM, did you want to have one last sentence or that's
No, it's okay. It's all right.
All right, guys, thanks for the debate. It was a great debate, legendary. Thanks to the both of you for taking on the debate, especially to Daud, because like JM said, many Muslims don't want to take this debate. It's not an easy debate to take because of the nature of it. So I appreciate you guys. It was a great debate. Now, Mr. Hassan has finally managed to join us, and
you want to come at the end.
Yeah, you want to come.
Yeah, I couldn't find
it wasn't coming
my
as smoke.
charger.
Yeah, when it's safe. He wants to come when it's safe.
Yeah.
Is it safe to come in? Is it all right? He had this idea. I'll be honest with you. I don't think there's anything else to say, but no open questions at the end. So, is there any questions you have? Oh, Hassan, in regards
Okay, yeah.
to
So
So yeah, it was a good debate. It went a lot better than I expected, to be honest with you. Both parties presented their points very well. There are Muslims that are afraid to have this discussion. I'm one of them.
I was just gonna say that.
Apparently, well, yeah, I dodge this one like an angry bullet all the time. So, well done to oh, he's gone. Daud's gone. Oh, shame. Well done to Daud and JM for having the topic and the discussion. I do have a question for JM though, although I'm hammering the point. It might have been mentioned already.
If you have a question for me as well, I'm happy to take it.
I have none for you. I can't throw a bottle at you through the camera, so it's like Conor McGregor or something. If you can share my screen for a second.
Yep, sure.
I don't want to hold people any longer. They've already been, Well, so this is the crux of the whole situation, right? This is the pivot point. So as soon as you accept this definition, right, then you can label someone a PDF file, although the word has been said a few times, so it doesn't matter anymore. But as soon as you can establish a person comes under this criteria, this definition, then the argument's pretty much done. It's as soon as you can establish that sexual feelings directed towards a child. The definition of a child is the one that's being questioned. So sexual feelings, not questioned. Directed towards, not questioned. Child. Now, Daud's point, unfortunately, he's gone out here. There was a back and forth in terms of defining what a child is, but I think you guys came to the same conclusion, meaning prepubescent. Now, if it says in the hadith that she was pubescent when the relationship or the marriage was consummated, would it still be considered a PDF, an active PDF filing, whatever?
For me, yes, it would. For me personally, yes, it would. But I think it's important to, and I'm sure, and I noticed there were some giggles when I said this, but it is a fact that it's not been determined that Aisha was prepubescent when she had sex with Muhammad.
What would determine it?
I don't know. I don't know, but I know from my. I mean, you may be able to prove me wrong. I'm just going by this research I've done.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't see anything that really. I mean, I know there's some people that say, some Muslims say that it is determined. There's definitely some that say it isn't, because I saw those. I saw people. I read Muslim that was saying it hasn't been determined whether or not. So I think it seems to be still up in the air. Would you agree with that or no?
Well, we use specifically the hadiths to because there is some mention of her in the Quran, as far as I can remember. But in terms of marriage and consummating marriage and the details that we're trying to get through, it's referenced specifically only in the hadith, the hadiths. And the hadith that actually confirms her age, confirms the consummation of the marriage, and so on, the one that we all know of, it says here, if should I put it on the screen? Because I guess you don't put it on the screen. If you don't mind, Octavio, I'll put it on the screen.
No problem. Jem quoted the hadith as well that said she was prepubescent.
You have to take this
so that's JM stuff. Sorry. Okay. All right. Okay. Hold on. All right. Got it.
Okay. Yeah, I remember seeing a hadith. This is not the one actually. Okay, I remember saying this is a wrong hadith. This is the hadith that just basically goes in details.
I shared this one.
Yeah, you shared this one.
No, that's not the one you shared, JM.
Okay, no, I think I shared two. No, I think I shared that one. I shared two.
No, the one I remember you sharing is the one that said that the playing with the dolls and similar images forbidden, but it was allowed for Aisha at the time. She was a little girl, not yet reached age of puberty.
Yeah, that was the second one. And the first one was the one Hassan showed. But the second one does actually say she hasn't reached puberty.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember reading a hadith somewhere saying about she reached age of puberty. Anyway, I'll have to find it.
But can I make the point? Okay, are you okay? Do you have a question?
I'll round it off, and then you go on to the point. So the point I'm making here is, if the general definition is puberty, no longer a child, pre-puberty, still a child. If he consummated the marriage at the age of puberty, by definition, he wouldn't be committing an act of PDF files.
I reject that premise personally.
On what grounds?
On the grounds that she's under 10 years of age.
So not age. So you're using age, not puberty as a indicator.
So what I'm doing, obviously, we have to use. Okay, we have to use what we call a kind of a general consensus here.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to gather all 10-year-old children, children below the age of 10, with girls, the majority of them would not be starting their period first. That's the first thing, because most girls start their period around the age of 12. Okay, it's not 9 as Daud was saying. I don't know where he got that from. Now, I mean, I wanted to address it. I was pretty disgusted by him saying that, to be honest. It is just not true. You're aware of that, aren't you, as well? Yeah, that's not true.
Am I aware of it? Do I assume it to be true? Yes. Am I aware of it? No.
Okay.
But I can put on the screen right now something that I've got on the screen. Octavia, if you don't mind.
The average. Okay, let me just read this quickly.
Yeah.
The average age for girls to get their first period is around 12 years of age. This is established. This is an established fact.
This is
average age.
I've got one on the screen as well. Just sorry to interrupt. I've got in Saudi Arabia, the average age of a girl to start puberty is generally between 8 and 13 years old.
Okay, now you don't think that may be slightly biased because of the.
Okay. No. Let's. Well, yeah. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Let's do Sweden, a colder climate. Okay, so it's 13. Let's do.
Okay. I'm saying general. Okay, let's go by the Saudi one.
Just type the average age for puberty. That's just type
Nigeria. Nigeria is 8 to 13 as well. So.
If you put the average age, because this could all be true. The average, it actually says it further down. Read further down. No, the average age. Go up. The average age is around 13. So this is my point.
The average age is.
So if you used to get 100 girls in a stadium 10 years or younger, the majority of them wouldn't be having a period.
I agree with you in that sense. Yeah.
So with that in mind, yes, if by the off chance she's an outlier and she's managed, and this would mean that she's an outlier, that she had her period before the age of 10, that still labels her a child.
Why?
Because she's under the age of 10.
No, but you're using the criteria of puberty as the definition of
I'm not. This is what I'm saying to you. I'm not. I'm saying that by the average age of a, if you want to use it as a criteria, if we're using it as a criteria, because she's an outlier, doesn't mean she's no longer a child.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, if we go by the definition being puberty, the strict definition.
Let's use your logic. There's another outlier that gets puberty at 5. Does that mean that she's acceptable to be slept with?
That's not what I'm saying.
No, I'm asking you. But I'm asking you that.
I asked. Can I rephrase your question to make me seem less like a?
No, you can't rephrase it.
Well,
can't rephrase it. If there's an outlier out there, that had let's say 6. An outlier. I bet, and I think the weird thing about it, if I was to probably do a Google search of the youngest age girl had menstruation, I probably would find a 6-year-old. So let's
can you do that, please? Can we actually do that? If that's all right. Youngest.
I'm doing it now.
Yeah, I can see on the screen. Yeah, I can see it.
Well, I would say to have that period.
However,
I don't really want to. Yeah.
5. It says
5.
The youngest confirmed age of a girl experiencing puberty is 5 years.
No, so I'm expecting some type of medal in the post. Okay.
Of course.
Thank you.
Your big medal. Big one.
Yeah, and then who's gonna post? Who's gonna post the medal to me then?
Okay, can I continue now? Guys? Can I continue? Now?
Yeah, you
So
may
you got,
continue.
so you got a 5-year-old having her menses.
Yes.
Does that mean that it's acceptable to have sex with her?
You want me to respond?
Yeah.
No, just want to reply.
Okay. Let's not go into group chat. So the question is, at the age of 5, in this particular example. Yeah. I'm not. Nobody's running away. I'm here.
No, I respect it.
Yeah. So at the age of 5, is it acceptable to, in this particular example, the youngest confirmed age of a girl experiencing puberty is 5 years old? Is it considered acceptable?
Yeah.
To have sex with that girl?
Yes.
It's Okay, calm down, Octavio. Can you just put yourself on mute? I don't need to hear JM's echo. God almighty.
Mediator. Sorry.
Okay. So, because I'm here, like I'm sweating enough. Relax. So.
You're gonna be sweating more in a minute. My next question.
So the answer to the question is that it is dependent upon the culture.
So you're saying in some cultures, you think that's acceptable?
Because the criteria.
No, but hold on.
Let's say.
I want people to speak for them. I want people to be very. Like, people need to speak for what they themselves think.
I'll answer the question.
Very important.
I'll answer the question in a very sterile, straightforward. No, Jay, let me finish. Right, okay. I'll answer in a very straightforward, sterile, almost legal definition way of answering, and then I'll answer it in a way that would be more my opinion, because I think you want both. Well, you want one, but I'll give you both. Okay. Does that suffice?
That's fine.
Okay, cool. So in a more sterile, straightforward legal definition, when I say sterile, meaning stripped of emotion and whatever, it isn't necessarily requested. I'm going strictly by the definition of what a PDF file is. A PDF file is a person who is attracted to prepubescent children. In this example on the screen, the youngest pubescent girl ever seems to be 5 years old. Having sexual relations would not fit that definition, so would not be referred to as a PDF. That's one. 2, answering from my perspective, it's a bit much. It's unusual. Would I consider this person to be a PDF file? Technically, I still couldn't. But does it make me feel uncomfortable? Yes. Do I think it's wrong? Yes. And then I hope that answers the question.
Okay, so I mean.
Yes, of course. Yeah, let me round off my answer. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm coming from this is a person in 2025 speaking on a very unusual. I didn't even know this until I googled it. It's not in my search history, so it's not something that I generally think about, and I that is the norm in my personal experience.
So, do you think a 5 or a 6 or a 7? Let's go from 5 to 9.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think someone of that age can consent to sex? Hello?
What does consent mean?
Nelson, please. I've already struggled with one. I can't.
He doesn't want to talk to me. Can she agree? Can she agree to having sex with the opposite sex?
A human female from the age of 5 to 9, can they consent to sex?
It's a good question. It's a good question.
Because you did say on your first answer that a 5-year-old who goes through puberty, it's okay for her to get married because she's no longer a child.
I know.
So You didn't say that?
No,
But it applies to a 9-year-old though.
I never said that as well.
But you do believe that. You
What
don't
do I-
believe the prophet did anything wrong in doing it.
I'm a bit lost.
Anyway, but I'm going to move. I'm going to swiftly move on. So the point I'm making is this.
Yeah.
What is okay? This is the next question. It's really easy.
Again, just to clarify, just sorry, Jam, I just want to make it
Yeah. So,
to make it extremely clear where I'm coming from. The title of the show is, what's the title of the show? I don't even know what the title of the show is. Was Muhammad's marriage to Aisha moral? I think the question, because was the marriage of Muhammad marriage to Aisha moral? That's a very subjective question. The term moral just throws out a conundrum. I think the real question is, was he a PDF file? That's the question. I think that's the question everybody's trying to answer here. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. By the strict definition, all I'm arguing is no. By the strict definition, no. That's all I'm saying. Is JM still there?
I'm still here. So this is what I'm going to talk about now.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about now. So I'm not going to answer the question. I'm looking at talk. So they can't consent. I think is what you don't want to say, but we can all agree they cannot. A child between 5 to 9 cannot consent to sex, and any human being that cannot consent to sex and has sex is being. I mean, do we need to say the word? No, I don't think so. But we know it begins with R. So this is again. I didn't want to. The reason why I didn't want to bring this up in the debate because it would be a bit too contentious. Because that now we. But this is the fact of the matter that if she couldn't consent to it, it's abuse. By any definition, it's abuse. And the thing that he got annoyed with me about is he never, ever addressed the physical consequences. I went into detail about the physical consequences. I went into detail about the ramifications, potentially the infertility and stuff like that. These are all facts. These are medical facts. He never touched that. That's why I believe that it went wrong off the rails. And the second part for me that really confirmed it is when, and I want people, I want to, boy, if Nelson could get clipping, please, this for my bit.
Oh, there'll be a lot of clipping going on. There'll be clip farm out here.
When he said if he had sex with another, now, okay, Hassan.
Yes.
Did he or did he not say? Did he not reference the fact that if he didn't have sex with another 9-year-old?
Okay, so it was interpreted that way. I don't think those were his exact words.
What?
Were those exact words?
I know you're laughing behind the screen.
I'm not laughing. Here's what I heard.
You know what? I get it. I know you can't kind of, but look.
Yeah.
I'm not playing.
He literally, Nelson, did he not reference? I don't know if you're doing the moderator role. If you can't answer, fair enough. If you can answer, did he or did he not reference the fact that he could have sex with another 9? If he had sex with another 9-year-old, that would constitute PDF file because it's a persistent attraction.
Yes.
Thank you. He said it.
But do you know why he was saying it?
Oh, so now he said it, Hassan.
No. Can I quote? Can I quote what I remember?
Huh?
Can I quote what I remember?
Yeah, you go ahead, Hassan. You go ahead.
Yeah, sarcastically. You go ahead. All right, cool. This doesn't make Jesus God, by the way, Octavio. So you can.
Oh, come on.
This is where we're going with this. So the point, from what I remember, it's the habitual, or there was a particular word. Is it habitual or
perpetual attraction to children?
Yes, that's
so his argument was that if she had sex with another 9-year-old, that would demonstrate a perpetual attraction.
I think the point was it would be an indicator, not a certainty, because it's uncontrollable.
Why is not having sex with one 9-year-old not an indicator of PDF file?
It's one of the.
That's ridiculous.
I'll tell you why it's not ridiculous.
Oh, come on, it's ridiculous.
Can I present to you possibly why it's not ridiculous?
You can try.
Okay. because it was classified as a disorder, meaning something you can't control, meaning you won't want to do it once, you do it repeatedly, meaning that it would come under the classification of a disorder.
Great. I'm so glad you said that, because what did I do? And I got to give us a pat on the back for this. This is a deft move. When I gave him the scenario, Nelson, do you remember that scenario? I gave him the scenario of a man that had.
Oh, yes, I do. Oh, yes, I do. Yes.
And then he has one singular act of sex with a 8, and I said 8 or 9-year-old. I was very specific in my language.
Extremely.
I said 8 or 9-year-old. Would that be an act of pedophilia? What was his response to that, Hassan?
Yes or something?
Yes.
Yes or something. He said yes. So what did he do there, Hassan? He conceded to the fact it could be a persistent attraction.
But in his defense,
Why is that going? Why am I hearing noise in the background?
So
he admitted it could be a persistent attraction, or it could be a one act. And you know the irony of all of this? The definition says that too. It says it could be a persistent attraction or the act.
Sorry, can I just say one thing, Jim? Can I just add one observation? I would argue that consistently having sexual intercourse with a 9-year-old, which I'm sure that was done regularly, I would say that shows persistence, that shows attraction. It's not one act only. So, for example, you have, and then you stop yourself and you don't ever have because you had that one time. I would argue that continuously having sex with a 9-year-old, which would have happened, that would constitute as persistence. That would be viewed as being persistent.
Okay. You know what he said, that further he dug his own hole and fell in it? You know what he said after? She wasn't always 9 years of age.
Yeah.
But in
Hold on. Let me make my point. You saying if she wasn't always 9 years of age, she did grow up. What are you saying then? You're literally condemning the act, because you would have to put a qualifier and say she wasn't always 9. Because I said he had sex with her throughout her ninth year on earth. He continuously had sex. He took offense to that and said, but she wasn't always 9 years. What is he saying then? He's admitting that it's wrong.
Well, to be fair,
you know what? I mean, I've won some debates, but this was a vicious destruction. A destruction.
To be fair,
yes,
you lost the debate.
Oh, well, you have to say that. I'm not even mad at you. I'm not mad at you.
I love the pause. I love how
he has to say, Nelson. He has to say that though.
Of course.
Now we're doing.
Oh no! Come on, bro! Don't take it like that. He's gonna run. Listen, we don't want Hassan to run. We don't want Hassan to run.
Give me a minute.
Now we're doing the whole thing. Hassan,
I'm going to present this to you to show why you have to do it.
Okay.
Let me be serious now.
Okay.
The reason why you have to say that.
Yeah.
If you agree with me that Muhammad was wrong, you have to denounce your faith.
Well,
hold on. That's why you have to say that. You have to say I lost the debate. Because if you say I won the debate, that means you agree. You're saying that I'm right in condemning what he did, and you can't condemn the best example of man on earth. You can't do that.
Can I
very well said, James. Very well said.
He is your prophet. You cannot go against him.
Can I respond to that?
Very well said.
Relax a puppet, please. Just like this is why I don't want to come on this thing, man. It sounds like a cow. Like, relax, bro. It's annoying, man. It's all right, cool. Anyway, you're like Mr. Carson. You're like Mr. Carson. Anyway, so to respond to your point, sincerely, no jokes, just being honest. Your statement of if you condemn the prophet, therefore you'd be leaving Islam. I believe that to be true. To say that the Prophet ﷺ was morally wrong for this action or that action, you can say mistaken, that's fine. But to say that he's moral, because Islamically he would make mistakes and he would be corrected. But to say that he's morally wrong would make me a non-Muslim. I believe that to be true. So your statement is correct, but it's not in relation to this debate.
So if you said that Muhammad made a mistake having sex with Aisha, could you get away with that?
No.
Well, then you can't. Then what are you talking about?
Well, let me give it a qualifier. Let me get a qualifier. I'm not saying you lost the debate simply because I have to defend, because that would be a strange thing for me to do. I think
you have to though. You can say
really.
that's
not true. That's not true. I don't have to do anything.
There's no way.
I could
There's
sit.
no
I
way
could
that you
sit here
can say
right
I want
now.
to debate. You can't do it.
Well, you're suggesting I have no free will. I could literally sit here and say
you don't have free will.
I do have free will. I'm a human being like everybody else.
No, you don't.
Does your Lord and Savior say that all human beings are given free will?
You don't have free will. No, so I don't have free will. You either if you decide to go against it, then you're putting yourself in jeopardy.
Mm-hmm.
In what sense?
Because you're out of favor.
Oh, being condemned to hell.
I don't believe in that particularly, but you're
but from my religious,
you're up for destruction.
From my religious perspective, yeah, I see what you're saying.
You are no longer a Muslim. Listen, you are no longer a Muslim if you said Muhammad was morally wrong or made a mistake when it comes to Aisha.
That's true.
You would not be accepted in the fold of Islam if you said he was morally wrong for what he did with Aisha, or you said he did a mistake with regards to Aisha.
But
you would not continue as a Muslim. This is just a fact.
Okay, let me respond to that. So I have free will. I can literally say Jesus is God or the Son of God or whatever it is, but I won't because it's not true. I have the free will to say it and do whatever I want, generally. I'm saying you've lost the debate because of one particular point, and I just mentioned it a minute ago. By your own definition, the Prophet Muhammad wasn't a PDF. So. Your definition of a child is the textbook definition of a child. Prepubescent. You said if we have the anomaly.
No. Hold on. He asked me the same question. I disagreed. I said if he asked me if she was pubescent, would I still feel? I said no. For me, she's still a child.
Okay, so your subjective opinion states the definition of a PDF.
I've explained it because we have a child here, 5 years of age, who got a period. Are you saying that that's not a child, Hassan?
Well, not necessarily to turn it on me because we've already been down that path.
But you're using the arguments against me. You're saying because she may not be prepubescent, it doesn't make her a child. We have a 5-year-old here who got her period.
Yeah.
Before that, it seems. Even that's weird. Even that. That's a child.
Is she still a child, Hassan?
Well, hold on, Octavia. So, again, sticking to the strict definition of what a PDF is, a child, a person who's attracted to a child and practices that attraction because I'm going to alter the definition a little bit by adding you have to act upon your attraction, not necessarily just thinking it or feeling it. There has to be the act of, I'm going to add, acting upon it. Right, acting upon sexual attraction towards a child, and your definition is a textbook definition of a child, which is somebody who's prepubescent. By that textbook definition, the marriage of Prophet Muhammad to Aisha would not come out of that definition, correct?
No, it's not correct.
No.
So you're changing the. Hold on, Octavia. So you're changing the definition of a child. Then?
No. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Okay. This is how I'm going to. This is the best way I can
answer.
Show this. Show it. Share this. Take that off the screen now. So I'm going to share something quickly.
What? Take the 5-year-old.
Yeah. I've got something here. How do I share it? I put it in the thing.
Okay.
Oh, here you go. Would you accept that he was a Hebrewophile then, at least?
Okay. You need to double You need to really pick that up. Let me see.
Okay, well, can you bring that up now? So, I mean,
no, I've got it on my thing.
Yeah.
So Hebephilia is a strong, persistent, and sexual interest by adults in pubescent children who are in their early adolescence, typically ages 11 to 14. So she was 9. So
younger than 11.
Right. So then if hebophilia is an attraction over 11, and he was attracted to someone below 11, what is he? Pedophile.
No, I think you mean hebephile.
No. Hebephile says 11 upwards.
Okay.
He was attracted to someone that was between the age of, we don't know when his attraction hit him, when he looked at him and thought, it was between the age of 6 and 9. He looked at her and thought, actually, you know what?
That's not true. That's not true. That's not.
What do you mean that's not true?
You're asserting that, and that's one question you asked Daud. You said, when was
No,
he?
I said it has to be between their ages. I didn't say what age. I said it has to be between their ages.
I know you're giving a range. I'm not disqualifying that.
So why are
But
you saying it's not true?
Because you're qualifying the range based on your assumption.
It has to be between the age of 6 and 9.
Where do you get the assumption that
He got married to her at 6, and he had sex with her at 9. So
but you're
between the
suggesting he
ages
pursued her.
of 6 and 9, he found her sexually attractive.
You're asserting that he pursued her sexually.
What? Am I speaking Greek or something?
You're
Bro,
speaking in Arabic.
Bro, between the ages of 6 and 9,
Yeah,
he
I think
married
the
her
age
at 6. He had sex with her at 9.
Why are you
Between-
using 6 as the age?
Because he married her.
At 6, yes.
Yeah, so
And-
between the ages of 6 and 9, he found her physically attractive.
So why are you asserting that he pursued her sexually?
Because he had sex with her at 9.
And he married her.
Why
And
is,
he married her at
why is him marrying her an indication that he pursued her sexually?
Because
I didn't say that. I
because
said
sex,
he must have found her attractive. I didn't say pursued her sexually.
Well,
See,
I mean apply.
I'm
I was
saying
implying
that
attractive.
he found her
Found her
physically
attractive.
between the ages of 6 and 9. I don't know what age it was. I'm giving you a barrier.
You're giving me a range, yes, and
Yeah,
I get that. I get the
and-
wisdom behind the range. Yes, I get that.
Because he married her at 6, he had sex at 9. So between those 3 years,
Yes.
he found at one point within those 3 years, he found her physically attractive. I don't
Where
know if
do
he
you-
was at 6,
Where do you get that from?
because he had sex with her at 9.
Yeah, but you're asserting that he have had an attraction towards a child.
He did have a attraction to a child.
yes,
What's it
he considered her for marriage.
He didn't consider her for marriage because of his attraction towards her.
Okay, let's just say this. Let's just say it like this. He had.
Yeah,
you,
he did.
you could go with the child thing if you want, but let's just say it as it is. He was sexually attracted to a 9-year-old girl. Is that either true or false?
He consummated the marriage.
No. Answer my question.
I'm asking you
Was he
questions, sir.
sex- No, I'm asking you. No, it's a yes or no question.
Well,
In order-
the question
Was
is
he
yours.
In order to consummate the marriage, you have to be sexually attracted to the person
Where are you
Right.
getting that from?
Oh,
from the act of consummation.
thank
So he
you.
consummated the marriage. Yes, correct. To a 9-year-old girl. Yes.
During the
So he
act
was
of
sexually-
consummation, during the
But
act
that
of
still doesn't make
consummation,
him a PDF file.
hold on. During the act of consummation,
Yes.
you have to be physically attractive enough. I don't have to go into how it works. For you to actually fulfill
Consummate.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to be sexually attractive to that person.
Again, was it to a child?
He was
Yes,
to a 9-year-old.
to a 9-year-old.
Octavia said yes.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm debating Octavia or JM, but I think, well, I'm having a discussion with JM. By JM's definition,
Well, I mean, calling me on it because you think it's going to be okay.
because you keep mumbling in the background. With all due respect, I don't mean that in a disrespectful way.
Do you know I'm going to say yes, Hassan?
Yes.
I'm going to say yes, it was a child.
Why?
Okay, and I gave you the reasons why, because I said it's very unlikely that
Yes.
she was on a period,
Yes.
because the average age of a girl getting a period is 12. So
Yeah.
the probability is that yes, it was. If you want to use that, let's be going to go with that criteria that being prepubescent means
Makes
you're
you
a
a child.
child. Let's
Yeah.
go with that.
Yes.
Likelihood is she was a child, because the average age that a girl has a period is 12. So I have authority to say that she was a child. Because hold on, I have the authority to say that she was a child for 2 reasons.
Yes.
Number one is my personal reason that a child under a 9-year-old is a child, which is I think is a consensus that most people would have, by the way. But you can ignore that if you want. But even let's go by the pubescent part. The average age that a girl gets at puberty is 12. She was 9. She's 9, 10, 11, 3 years younger than the average age. By that, the likelihood of her having a period is reduced significantly, which means that more than likely she didn't have a period, which means more than likely she was a child under that definition also.
Right. So I'll respond to that by saying your assumption is, what was the word that would use? Presentism. It's based on the idea of your cultural, circumstantial, present perception of when puberty occurs, when a child is a child. The definition is, or the correct way, or the more appropriate way to make that assumption is, what is the average age of puberty a person in the Arabian Peninsula, a girl goes through puberty? As I put on the screen, it's 9. Beyond that, anything beyond that is an assumption.
Okay,
Because he could have consummated. Sorry, let me just. Sorry,
Yeah.
he could have consummated the marriage at 6, 7, 8, but there was a waiting period all the way till 9, when menstruation most likely occurred. So the assumption is generic for something very specific. It's present for something far, far away, whatever, in terms of time period. The evidence suggests more likely that she went through puberty at the age of 9, and which asserts the idea that he is not a PDF file,
Okay.
and that classification doesn't suit.
Do you think? Do you think that if she was 6 and had a period, and he had sex with her, would you label him a pedophile?
Hypothetical.
Why? That's a question.
Okay. I'll
Yeah,
buy it.
would you label him a pedophile if she was 6 and had a period and he slept with her?
Mhm.
Would you label him a pedophile?
Question.
Okay, so just to clarify the question, if she went through menstruation at the age of 6, I think we've already answered this, to be honest with you.
No.
If she was, well, I'll buy it. If she was at the, just to clarify your question to make sure I've got it correctly, if she went through menstruation at the age of 6, would I classify her as a pedophile?
Yes.
Classify him.
Him.
What did I say? Oh, okay, yeah. I'm all over the place. So, why would I classify him as a pedophile by the textbook definition when menstruation occurs at the age of, when a child becomes, when she stopped being a child at menstruation?
So you're saying, so you wouldn't consider that to pedophilia then? Just say that.
But why would I?
I'm asking you, you wouldn't do.
I'm asking you, why would I?
Just say it, Hassan.
Because she's 6. That's why. Because she's 6.
But you added a caveat of menstruation.
Yeah, I am. So I'm saying to you, if she had if she menstruated at 6, you wouldn't consider that to be an attraction to children.
By the definition that you and I both have, it wouldn't be considered PDF filing.
So you'd be okay with him having sex with a 6-year-old?
Far too generic a question.
You wouldn't consider him to be a PDF if he engaged in sexual activity with a 6-year-old just because she had her period at 6?
Depends on your definition of PDF file.
So let's go with this again then. Let's go with the Heberfiles thing again. So would you consider him to be a Heberfile then potentially?
You'd have to run the definition again because it's an unusual word. You got the Wikipedia thing.
I think you have to bring it up.
You have to click on it, Octavia. I don't know why it's gone off the screen. It's JM's link.
So did Hassan take it off the screen?
No,
How can I take off the screen?
Okay.
So
here, the hebephilia is a strong, persistent sexual interest by adults in pubescent children who are in their early adolescence. By that definition, by having a hebephile.
No, because you used the word prepubescent.
What? No, I didn't. I read it again.
It says it.
Hebephilia is a strong, persistent sexual interest by adults in pubescent children who are in their early adolescence. By that definition,
sugar. I was reading the other way around. I read it as prepubescent.
Is he a hebephile?
What's the answer?
That's a good question. That's a good question.
And then I want you to answer this question: should a hebephile be a best representation of men on Earth today?
Okay, that's a good question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, give me a second.
Sorry, I apologize.
totally.
Oh, you know what, Nelson? 2 in 1 day.
Yeah, I know.
Well, you lost the other debate. So
Let him answer. He might just call him.
You literally lost the other debate.
He might just call his prophet a hebephile. You know what I mean? He might even do that. Let's go ahead and see if he's a hebephile.
Oh, by this definition, no.
Okay.
Oh, why is that? Why is that?
I need to give me a minute.
I can just say no.
No, because I read it and I thought, oh, he's got a counter argument.
I will read it again. I'm going to read it. I might read it a few times. Gets my teeth white.
Yeah, read it again. Read it again.
Hebephilia is a strong.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Stop.
Sexual interest by adults in pubescent children.
Yeah.
Who are in their early adolescence.
Yeah. By this definition, no.
Why?
Okay.
Because you can't affirm that you had a strong and persistent sexual interest in a pubescent child who was in the early adolescence.
And why not?
Why is
You
that?
tell me.
No, you have to tell us.
Did he have sex with her continuously or not?
Well, persistent sexual interest. I don't know.
So you only had sex with her once. Hassan, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah. So there is no. Well, I don't know the details. I don't think so.
You don't think he had sex with her more than one time?
This is the thing. I'm not familiar with this term, so I'm just trying to understand it. Strong, persistent sexual interest.
How long was he married to her for?
12 years, I think. Isn't it?
Okay.
11, no, 9 years.
Do you think in that time they only had sex
No, it's actually 12 years. Sorry, 12 years.
Yeah, 12 years. Do you think in that time they only had sex once?
1 second now. 1 second. I'm reading the definition again.
Would you like me to read it?
Oh, can you even explain it to me? In fact, just explain it to me.
What is it to explain?
It's the persistent sexual interest by adults in.
Okay, I'm going to help you out. Nelson, watch this. Nelson, watch this. Nelson.
Unbelievable.
Hassan, listen to this. I'm going to help you out here. So, pedophilia. If a man has sex with a child once, okay?
Yes.
A prepubescent child once.
Yes.
Is he a pedophile?
A prepubescent child once, yes.
He is. Okay. So if a hebephile has sex once with a pubescent child in the early stages of adolescence, is he a hebephile?
Pubescent child.
Huh? He's not.
I'm still here. Relax.
Hello? Hassan, you still there?
I think it's nap time.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, we got it.
I think it's nap time.
Yeah, it's that time. Yeah.
Okay, guys, you know what? Let's just let's end it. Let's end it. Like,
Yeah.
Hold on. So
it's not worth it, man. Seriously.
Hassan, come on, man.
well, okay. So I'm not familiar with this term hebephile. I don't really understand it. I don't get it.
Understand.
I don't get it. I don't even get it. It says pubescent children. So like, why is there a separate word for this? I don't know.
Yeah, because it says typically between the ages of 11 and 14.
Mm-hmm.
So, can I just say something?
Early stages of puberty, basically.
JM,
11 to 14.
JM is giving you the grace of, let's say she had a period. So therefore,
yeah. Does it come under this definition? Yeah.
Would he be considered a hebephile if that was the case? Because I'll be honest with you. I mean, JM didn't really make he didn't really bring this up, but JM could have used this more, to be honest with you, in the debate.
Right.
Let me just quickly read this. Sahih Al-Bukhari 6130. He says, I used to play with the dolls in the presence of the Prophet.
Can you put it on the screen?
hold on a second, please. I used to play with the dolls in the presence of the prophet, and my girlfriends also used to play with me. When Allah's messenger used to enter my dwelling place, they used to hide themselves, but the prophet would call them to join and play with me. The playing with dolls and similar images is forbidden, but it was allowed for Aisha at that time, as she was a little girl, not yet reached the age of puberty.
Okay.
Like he could have used that, bro. He could have used that more.
Why? How could he use it?
So what I'm saying to you is this: is he a hebephile? If Jem was to be charitable to you, right?
Yeah.
He could turn around and say, in a sense, he's doing it right now. He's asking you, is he a hebephile? And you still can't answer.
Because I'm not sure what it is. I need to look into it. I'm not gonna just.
It literally, look, I can read it for you. Hebephilia is a strong,
I've read it
persistent
7 times.
interest by adults in pubescent children who are in early adolescence.
Yeah.
Typically ages 11 to 14. He was 9. And he's already
he married at 6.
he's being charitable. And I'm asking you, is he a hebephile then in that case?
I'll have to look into this word. I'm not gonna just bite on this because the whole topic was, is he a PDF file? I've answered that. JM has answered it. The answer is clearly no. But hebephile,
That's not no. but
because the definition of a child is prepubescent. And we established that she wasn't prepubescent, and that we all come to.
No, we haven't established that.
I'm saying. No one established that.
Can you disprove it? Can you disprove it?
Your whole hadith do not establish it.
Okay.
Well, I noticed this, Nelson. Do you notice when I said that?
Yeah.
There was an immediate reaction from Hassan and the other brother that was on the show. Because I took that as, I've hit something when I said that.
What did
you hit that nerve?
I did. When I said that there was no definitive account that she was.
This is the thing. I'm sure I've read it.
Well, you can't. Come on, sure.
I'm sure. I need to bring it up. Admittedly,
I'm sure.
You should be having that tattooed somewhere. You should have that in your house on a flipping poster. Hey, look, guys! She was. The accusation is so wild that you should have that to hand. Daud didn't have it to hand. I noticed that. He could say he was a definitive, is it?
Yeah, I'd have definitely had that tattooed on me, bro.
No, I don't have to have it tattooed. I can find it and then put it in the comment section. So
why did he find it and put it in the debate
comment section? Because there isn't one.
Yeah, because he can't do it.
Oh, I can find it.
Why didn't he find it?
No, but the thing is, just this hadith alone that I've read shows that she was already with basically what's his name, with Muhammad, and she wasn't and she wasn't on her period. There is nothing else to say, which means sex occurred before she even had a period.
You're assuming that that's unfounded.
And to be honest, Hassan, your argument you're putting now was not his argument. His central argument was it was a different time. That was his whole argument. You can't make a judgment because it was a different.
Hold on, Jim. Let me just ask a question. When Muslims get married, is the husband allowed to be around the wife before they get married?
Is he allowed to be around the wife before they get married? Well,
yeah.
I mean, if there's I guess in introductions,
No, I'm not talking about introductions. I'm talking about, is he allowed to spend time with the wife, with the woman that he's about to marry?
Alone? Is that your question? Just
alone.
Sure you mean alone. Generally speaking, I don't think so.
Okay, so no, exactly. So
what's
what we're talking about here? Basically, the way you're supposed to get married is once the agreement is made, both are going to get married. They're not supposed to see each other until marriage. So when they do,
that's not true.
I'm not talking about meetings. I'm talking about spending time with each other.
So say that they're not see each other. Be very precise. Say not spend time alone together. Until they're married.
They're not allowed to spend time with each other. Yeah, they can see each other from. Yeah, you can see a person across the street. But I doubt a 6-year-old was doing that. But the thing is, and then when they do get married, that's when they're allowed to basically be in the same dwelling together, right?
Well, she was married to him at this time.
Yes, she was married. So that means the marriage was consummated.
Where do you get that from?
What do you mean? Where do I get that from?
All you read is she was playing with dolls. He came in. Their friends stayed with her, and that's it. That's it. No, nothing indicating consummation of marriage. The consummation occurred at the age of 9.
So
what age was she playing? What age do you think she was playing with those dolls?
It could have been any time before 9. It could have been 9. It could have been 6. Could have been 7.
No, this is the thing about it. Is like even
Could have been 12.
I have to say, it is, to me, this is just me. I don't mean any disrespect.
Yeah.
And don't take any. But I think it's a bit revolting, if I'm honest, that we're having a conversation about a child playing with dolls, having sex with a 54-year-old man, and we're here. Is she prepubescent? Was she on a period? Was she wasn't on a period? Or
And I think that's ultimate.
Hold on. If she wasn't on a period, that means it's okay because she was on a period. She was 9, but she was on a period. She was a child. That makes it okay.
She was 5. She was 5, and it will be okay. Still.
Yeah, I mean, it's just.
That's not. I never said that. I never said that.
It's difficult. It's difficult. It was really difficult for me to debate and stay in my good. It was very. Some of the arguments I was coming across was just. I mean, he argued the fact that they discussed it in Parliament. So what?
In all fairness to Daud, I'm arguing this pretty much the same thing. I'm arguing in the sense that was she a child? Was she not a child? Again, our cultural.
That wasn't his argument.
Huh?
That wasn't his argument. His argument was that we should look at the time, look at the period of time, the 7th century part. That was his central argument. That we're not in a position to judge because this happened a long time ago. That's essentially his position.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll do final thoughts, and then I guess.
Okay.
It's random. I'm doing final thoughts. Actually, but I avoided this debate. This is why I avoided it. This stupid crap on the screen. Anyway, what was I saying? So, to conclude, technically, not a PDF file, even by JM's own definition, not a PDF. Only using personal, circumstantial presentism to affirm the perception of a PDF file, but technically not. Second point I want to make is, even if she was 19, this would still not, as JM's confirmed himself, Jesus would still be his Lord and Savior. But he's not the author of life, apparently. We believe what we want to believe. We follow the path we want to follow. We have our own biases, our own cultural, circumstantial, presentism, or whatever it may be, biases that distracts us from maybe taking a strict, definitional, logical perspective on something. And if that's a path to reject the faith, then that's it. So be it. We all have free will. I'm still a Muslim. James is still a whatever he is. I don't know how he identifies as. Octavia is still a Trinitarian that believes in 3 gods and what have you. So, yeah. I think, but in conclusion, I think everybody's been pretty much respectful. I think it could have gone a lot worse, and it didn't. I think the group chat is great to stir up motivations to get to a certain point. I think we're doing generally well. Well, who am I to make that judgment? Who am I to even talk? It's not my podcast. Thank you, Octavia, for not being your typical self, as I thought you would do. Just trolling in the background and trying to. What about the Muslims, though? What about the Muslims? I know the Catholics worship 3 gods, but so I much respect to everybody on the panel. To be honest with you.
Wicked. I've given mine already.
My final thoughts is, was Mohammed a PDF? Yes, he was, big time. Brother Daud lost the debate. I mean, that was ouch. I mean, there was no debate in this, but what? So did Brother Hassan. Hassan, please listen back to it. There's some cringe moments there, mate. What I would say is, I think it was what I'm happy about. Okay, is the fact that we've conducted ourselves in a professional, respectful manner, and that's something I'm proud of. That's something that you know, commendable. But apart from that, yes, I mean it's a proven fact. It's you can't really defend it. It's impossible to defend it, whichever way you look at it. That what he did was, he is a PDF. But and I feel for you, brothers. I really do. I really do, and I feel for you because you have to defend something like this. It can't be easy to defend anything like this as a Muslim. And I can understand why a lot of Muslims do not want to have these debates, these discussions, because it's impossible to defend it. And all I can say is, stop fighting with your conscience. You know what the truth is. Stop being a Muslim. It will lead you to hell.
Can I make
Yeah.
a quick statement
So,
quickly? Just a quick comment. You know.
Clipping the hell out of this. It'll be a
Can
lot.
you hear me?
Go on, bro.
Just a quick one. So, the debate wasn't is Mohammed a PDF file, by the way. The debate was the marriage morally wrong? So even your statement there has said that I lost the debate on that premise is wrong for you to say that, because that wasn't the topic of the debate. So now you know that was the topic of debate. Are you going to revise your statement?
You want me to answer?
Yep.
Allah is the author of morality, so in my opinion, you're wrong. Yeah.
No, that's not what the debate was. The debate wasn't Allah the author of morality either.
Oh, okay. I would say Allah is the author of morality, therefore you are wrong. And the evidence for that is your moral justification. Well, one, Jesus is your Lord and Savior. That's already a question.
Okay, listen, that's finished.
You don't like my answers. What do you want me to say? And then from there, using presentism and personal feelings to define what a PDF file is.
But it wasn't. That wasn't the debate. The debate wasn't. It came up in the debate, obviously.
Yes.
But the debate wasn't that. It wasn't whether he was a PDF file. It was whether the marriage was morally wrong.
Oh, okay. So I still think, I still think you're wrong.
So you think it was morally right then?
Why would I think it's not morally right?
Answer. Do you think it's morally right?
That's my answer.
No, I'm asking you to answer in a definitive way. Was it morally right?
I can't answer in a definitive way because.
Well, that's the answer in itself.
Okay, no. You know, I'll buy. Yes. Because you can't prove that he was a PDF file, and then.
So hold on. Ask the question again. Ask the question again.
Was it morally wrong?
It was not morally.
Was it morally wrong?
It was not morally wrong because nobody has presented a strong argument stating it's morally.
So you think it's morally right then?
Yeah.
Okay. There you go.
Do you think it's morally right for a 54-year-old man to have sexual intercourse with a 9-year-old?
It's getting late, bro. It's getting late.
It's the same question.
It's not the same question. It is
the same question. Is it morally right for a 54-year-old man to have sex with a 9-year-old? If you're being consistent and truthful, you should be able to say yes. And I'm not trying to force you to. I'm trying to put an answer out of you. But is it morally right for a 54-year-old man to have sex with a 9-year-old?
Was it morally correct for Prophet Muhammad to marry Aisha? Yes.
That's not what I asked, bro.
And that's my answer. Where can we go?
No, I'm seriously. I'm asking you. Can you just give me a straight answer? I'm not mentioning Muhammad in my question. Yeah. I'm not doing any of that.
Yeah.
Is it morally right for 54-year-old man to have sex with a 9-year-old?
Do you want to have a guess what my answer is going to be?
You're not going to answer it correctly, are you?
I've already answered it.
You're not going to answer it honestly, are you?
The question is yours. The answer is mine.
Wow. You see, and I want to end with this. This is what I find problematic, JM, is the fact that we are even talking about whether a 9-year-old child is a child. That I find very, very, very problematic. That shouldn't even be a question. A 9-year, and the fact that we've got a Muslim brother here who cannot say whether it's okay for a 54-year-old man to sleep with a 9-year-old. It tells you everything, because he knows in his conscience it's not right. So, and the fact that he cannot say yes it is or no it isn't tells you everything. And I'm not even talking about Muhammad. I'm just talking about just another regular person, who did the exact same thing that Muhammad did, and he can't answer. That tells you everything. But I think, this is a legendary. But guys, thanks for everything, guys. Appreciate it. If there's anything else, if there's nothing else, guys, we're gonna call it at night. All right.
Peace out.
Peace out, everyone.
Take it easy, guys. Unsubscribe.